and I think, a lot of this speculation is irresponsible. There are a few things we do know. The helicopter pilots, the guy flying the helicopter is apparently wearing night vision goggles. Now, I've seen several reports to that effect. Might not be the case. We won't know until they find the bodies and whatnot, presumably. But, and when you're wearing, I've worn night vision goggles. When you do that, you lose your peripheral vision. You can't see basically what's going on around you. That might have had something to do with it. It might have been that the helicopter pilot misidentified the aircraft. They were looking at a different aircraft, thinking that that was the one they were warned about. But I've been a pilot for over 50 years, and just little planes, but, I know how to fly an airplane, and I know what the rules are. And I've interacted with air traffic control more times than I can remember. And, when they say, do you have that plane, do you have that aircraft, visual confirmation, and you say yes, they take your word for it. They have no choice. Also, this is from July of last year. Now, keep in mind, Biden was president, but Republicans controlled the House and Senate, or at least controlled the House. And major aviation groups and unions urged Congress to address persistent shortfalls in funding for the FAA after a series of reports raised alarm about aging air traffic control facilities. Airlines for America, the Aerospace Industries Association, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Airline Pilots Association, and others warned of a failure to address funding needs that were negatively affecting the traveling public and other civil and military users of the system. In March, President Joe Biden proposed spending $8 billion over the next 5 years, beginning with $1 billion in 2025, to replace or modernize more than 20 aging air traffic control facilities and 377 critical radar systems. Republicans in the House of Representatives and the Senate refused to pass this legislation. The report said the FAA's communication system has been outdated for years. The agency can no longer get spare parts for many systems. Separately, the FAA wants funding from Congress to hire another 2,000 air traffic controllers. Last month, the FAA again extended cuts to minimum flight requirements at congested New York City airports through October of this year, 2025, citing staffing shortages. Did Congress do anything, the Republican-controlled Congress, do anything about Joe Biden's request? No, of course not. Wouldn't the GOP increase funding to the FAA? Well, because it's paid for with taxes from billionaires, and billionaires don't want to pay their damn taxes, so they're trying to gut the federal government. I mean, it's really that simple. And Democrats need to be repeating this over and over and over again. Donald Trump comes out and says, oh, this is the fault of black people. It's all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI, what? Inclusion, right? I'm not remembering what I stands for, but whatever. Yeah, inclusion, that's what I thought. Completely ignores Republican opposition to properly funding the FAA for years. I'm just astonished, absolutely astonished, that Trump would use the occasion of the tragic death of 67 people, apparent pilot error on the part of the helicopter pilot, to blame this on black people and women. I watched this press conference this morning with my mouth open. I can't believe he's saying this. And then J.D. Vance comes up to the podium, up to the lectern, and says, words to the effect of, I don't have the exact quote, but I heard it, words to the effect of, there were white people who were qualified to be air traffic controllers, but they were not hired because they had to hire some black people instead. Actually, I think the phrase he used was they were turned away because of the color of their skin. Well, does that mean that the black people who were hired were not qualified? Of course not. The FAA doesn't hire unqualified people just because of the color of their skin or their gender. This is just, and how do you even know that less qualified, he's implying less qualified people were hired. How do you even know that? The racism, the naked racism and misogyny, hatred of women that this administration displays at every opportunity, combined with their absolute incompetence and their unwillingness to appropriately fund our federal government, is simply mind-boggling.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast, the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. All out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Under the Influence, Putting Peer Pressure to Work by Robert H. Frank. And I'm reading from the prologue. That we are more closely connected to one another than most of us realize is an old idea. An important variation dates from 1929, when Hungarian writer Frigyes Karinthy published a short story entitled Chains. Two of the story's main characters speculate that any two living people can be connected by a chain involving no more than 5 acquaintances. That some such chains exist is hardly surprising, since most of us can think of people in distant locations to whom we're connected through a small number of intermediaries. The man bites dog aspect of Karinthy's conjecture is that almost any two people, A and E, could be linked by a chain like A knows B, B knows C, C knows D, who knows E. One of the first systematic attempts to test this claim came in the 1960s with a series of experiments by the psychologist Stanley Milgram. In it, he sent packages containing a small booklet to 96 people chosen at random from the Omaha, Nebraska telephone directory. His cover forwarded the booklet to a specific residence of Boston, Massachusetts, through a chain of personal acquaintances. He told them the name and address of the Boston resident, that he worked as a stockbroker, and that the first person in their chain should be somebody they knew on a first-name basis. Milgram also advised them to choose someone they believed, presumably based on the target's location and occupation, could be socially closer to the target than they were themselves. Subsequent recipients in the chain were asked to forward the same instructions. Many of the Omaha recipients undoubtedly tossed Milgram's booklet in the trash, so it's remarkable that the Boston target received 18 of the 96 packages. The average number of links in the 18 chains was 5.9. But the now familiar expression 6 degrees of separation would not gain broad currency until many years later, when John Guare's play by that name premiered on Broadway in 1990. The concept became a meme in full when 4 Albany college students introduced 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon in 1994, a game designed to measure the professional proximity of an actor, living or dead, to the American film star Kevin Bacon. An actor has a Bacon number of 1, for example, if he or she appeared in the same film with Bacon. Someone who appeared in a film with another actor who appeared in a film with Bacon has a Bacon number of 2, and so on. The average bacon number is 2.95 among actors who have one. In that group, even the actor most distant from bacon, William Rufus Shafter, has a bacon number of only 7. Shafter, a Union Army officer during the Civil War, appeared in 2 films in 1898. For academics who study social connectedness, the 6 degrees concept gained little traction until 1998. That's when the sociologist Duncan Watts and the mathematician Steve Straga published their landmark paper, Collective Dynamics of Small World Networks in Nature. In the years since then, this paper has provided the mathematical foundation for the analytical tools that social scientists have been using with such remarkable success to study how ideas and behaviors spread through populations like infectious diseases. It has already been cited by other scholars more than 38,000 times and is one of the few papers ever published to be among the most widely cited works in multiple disciplines. In his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, the evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins coined the term meme, which Webster now defines as an idea, behavior, style, or usage that spreads from person to person within a culture. The meme is to cultural transmission, Dawkins argued, as the gene is to biological transmission. One of Charles Darwin's central insights was that natural selection favors genetic variations that enhance the individual organism's ability to survive and reproduce. Much of the time, the same variations also benefit larger groups, but often not. For example, an inclination to cheat when no one's looking might benefit individuals, but widespread cheating almost always makes for groups. It is the same with memes. The memes that propagate most successfully are often ones that benefit both individuals and groups. But here too, not always. As the legal scholar Jeffrey Stake has argued, ideas should not be treated as inert products, but as living things that sometimes exert some influence over their environment. Some of the ideas are more adept at surviving than others, and the ones that survive will not necessarily be good for humans. It is often hard to evaluate whether a specific behavior even qualifies as a meme, and if so, whether its consequences on balance are positive or negative. Yet sometimes the evidence is clear. We know, for example, that the strongest predictor of whether people will take up smoking is the proportion of their close friends who smoke. Smoking is thus clearly a meme. The negative health consequences of smoking are also conclusively documented, and most smokers themselves express regret over having started. By definition, then, smoking unambiguously qualifies as a socially destructive meme. On the other side of the ledger, we have compelling evidence that the adoption of photovoltaic solar panels is both socially contagious and almost uniformly positive in terms of environmental consequences. Accordingly, few would object to calling the practice a socially beneficial meme. Adam Smith, widely considered the father of economics, is often cited in defense of the claim that competitive markets produce the greatest good for the greatest number. The book is Under the Influence by Robert H. Frank.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, top of the Tuesday to you. They think they are free, but for how long? Thoughts on freedom and, you know, how governments fall. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Also, is anyone surprised that Trump has paused the law prohibiting the bribing of foreign officials? Who's going to stand up to this and who benefits? I have a story to tell you about that. Also, federal workers who protected the security of our elections have been put on leave. Huh, I wonder why. And Senate Democrats launch a new whistleblower portal to expose Trump's lawlessness. Is it going to help? We'll talk about all those things in the first hour of the program. In the second hour of our program, PBS caves to Trump and closes their DEI program. I have doubts that this is going to help them. Brendan Carr is coming after them. We'll talk about that in the second hour. Also in the second hour, Morgan J. Freeman, just posted on his social media accounts, both on X and on Blue Sky, that Anthem, Blue Shield, Blue Cross just denied his cancer follow-up. Yeah, great stuff. We'll talk about that. And Google removes Pride Month, Black History Month, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and a few other holidays because, you know, Trump basically says you can't talk about black people and gay people and the Holocaust and Jews. I mean, you just, well, shame on Google. And also in our second hour, reality check alert. The lies just keep coming. We're debunking a few of them here. In the third hour of our program, our one guest for the day, Alex Lawson, is going to drop by with a call for protecting the integrity of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, following reports that DOGE has accessed the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and intends to go after Social Security next. And Donald Trump to the IRS. Stop investigating those rich tax cheats and instead go catch some brown people who are here without authorization. Yeah, all that in the third hour. So a lot to talk about today. I want to start out, though, with my op-ed today, Daily Take, HartmannReport.com. They think they are free, but for how long? And, what got me going on this was this new poll that just came out from CBS News, finding that roughly 2/3 of Americans approve of Donald Trump's actions so far and refer to him using the following 4 words: tough, energetic, focused, and effective. They think they are free. I mean, white people approving of Trump's actions to marginalize minorities, gut the federal government, hack and sue media outlets and reporters. White people who think that stuff is going to help them, in some small marginal ways, they may be right. I mean, a return of white supremacy and the marginalization of women in the workplace and in politics, for example, may produce some small benefits for some small number of white men. But there's a huge price to be paid for this in terms of what we used to refer to as freedom. I mean, Trump is going to have to do some serious stuff to reverse 100 years of progress on civil rights, women's rights, workers' rights. And he's going to eventually have to confront pushback from those groups. He's going to have to deny working people their right to organize unions or even be in unions. I mean, he tried this with his last administration when he put Eugene Scalia and, Antonin Scalia's son, the right-wing lawyer who, helps out with union busting, if my understanding of the reports are correct, as Secretary of Labor. And, same thing this time around. I mean, he's got another anti-labor labor secretary. He's going to have to restrict the ability of poor and middle-class people to rise above their economic stations through education by keeping education, higher education, obscenely expensive. All of those things eventually harm the middle class, and he's already started on every one of them, but it gets worse than that. I mean, as our freedoms are taken away and our government is turned into a one-party state, governance that assists the majority of the people begins to vanish. The freedom of speech goes away. Eventually, society basically turns cold as Trump's authoritarianism hardens the national zeitgeist. Here's some examples of what he's already done. Politicians can only advance or even hold on to their offices if they unceasingly praise dear leader Trump. And now they've even taken this to FBI agents who won't get hired unless they say that, on this form that January 6th was an inside job, the 2020 election was stolen from Trump, and the real patriots on January 6th were the rioters who killed police officers, not the police or politicians. Members of the media are facing life-destroying lawsuits if they criticize Trump or point out his successful prosecution for sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll. Those who support Trump no matter what get elevated, in the press sections of the White House and the Pentagon. And legitimate mainstream media who might occasionally question him get kicked out. Wealthy oligarchs who support our dear leader get tax breaks, government contracts, and special legislation giving them immunities, and see the federal agencies that once regulated them gutted. Judges, prosecutors, and reporters who challenge or expose dear leader's criminality are doxxed, threatened, and attacked on social media, making their lives both miserable and dangerous. Now, we know how this usually turns out because we've seen this movie before. In the last 30, 40, 50 years, Putin's Russia, Orban's Hungary, Duterte's Philippines, Pinochet's Chile, Bukele's El Salvador, El Sisi's Egypt, Erdogan's Turkey, Chavez's Venezuela, Lukashenko's Belarus, Ortega's Nicaragua, Prayut's Thailand, Saeed's Tunisia, Modi's India. I mean, we've seen this shift toward authoritarianism in all these countries. And almost a century ago, we saw it played out for the first time in modern history in Spain, Japan, Italy, and Germany. Back in the day, a fellow by the name of Milton Mayer, he was an American Jew of German ancestry. He was a brilliant writer. He worked for one of the major Chicago newspapers. I believe it was the Chicago Sun. But don't quote me on that. He went to Germany 7 years after Hitler's fall and befriended 10 average Germans, asking each one of them. And he wrote this book. They thought they were free about it. It was first published in 1955. So, he asked them, doesn't a nation rise up and protest the destruction of its own democracy? Don't people pour into the streets? And this college professor that he interviewed said, you see, one doesn't see exactly where or how to move. Believe me, this is true. Each act, each occasion is worse than the last, but only a little worse. You wait for the next and the next. You wait for the one great shocking occasion, thinking that others, when such a shock comes, will join you in resisting somehow. You don't want to act or even talk alone. You don't want to go out of your way and make trouble. Why not? Well, you're not in the habit of doing it. And it's not just fear of standing alone that restrains you. It's also genuine uncertainty. So Mayer asks him, how do we know? Is there a sudden proclamation by dear leader that the country is now officially fascist? This is what the college professor told him. But of course, this isn't the way it happens. In between come all the hundreds of little steps, some of them imperceptible, each of them preparing you not to be shocked by the next. Step C is not so much worse than step B, and if you didn't make it, why should you stop at C? And so on to D. And one day, too late, your principles, if you were ever sensible of them, all rush in upon you. The burden of self-deception has grown too heavy. And some minor incident, in my case, it was my little boy, hardly more than a baby, saying, Jews, swine, collapses it all at once. And you see that everything has changed, and changed completely under your nose. And yet, Milton Mayer pointed out, everything seems normal. After all, your leader isn't coming after the people who don't challenge him. I mean, if you work your job, if you watch football, if you listen to music, if you ignore the news and don't speak out, everything seems fine. Dear leader even gets high levels of popularity. In 1938, Adolf Hitler was the most popular politician in the world. He was on the cover of Time magazine for that. Mayer's professor friend told him that when the dear leader finally seizes control of all the levers of power, from political to economic to spiritual, everything changes, but everything also stays the same. Quote, the world you live in, your nation, your people, is not the world you were in at all. The forms are all there, all untouched, all reassuring, the houses, the shops, the jobs, the meal times, the visits, the concerts, the cinema, the holidays. But the spirit, which you never noticed because you made the lifelong mistake of identifying it with the forms, is changed. Now you live in a world of hate and fear, and the people who hate and fear do not even know it themselves. When everyone is transformed, no one is transformed. And now you live in a system which rules without responsibility, even to God. So here we are. Milton Mayer's professor friend said, how is this to be avoided among ordinary men, even highly educated ordinary men? And Milton Mayer had to answer, frankly, I don't know. Well, that was 1954. This is 2025. We now know. Trump's followers think that they're free. They're not. They're going to high price they're paying for his growing authoritarianism. Fascism, with its promises of efficiency and order and privileges for the racial majority, is, often popular at its early stages. By the time people figure out the scam, it's typically too late. So what do we do? Well, reach out to your elected representatives and demand resistance. Join movements like indivisible.org. Subscribe to independent media. Make a donation if you can. If you can't, call them to say thanks to politicians whenever they publicly challenge the regime. Raise hell on social media. Show up in the streets. Talk to relatives, neighbors, friends, coworkers, and acquaintances. Speak out. Be bold and brave. I mean, tragically, a series of missteps by both Democrats and our media have brought us to this moment. And the question for today is, will we stop this assault on our democracy before it's too late? And to a large extent, the answer to that question is up to you and me. Speak out. Get active. Tag you're it. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Anyone surprised that Donald Trump just paused the law that says it's illegal to bribe foreign countries for business deals? This is strange stuff. Stay tuned. And welcome back. Roger in Seattle. Hey, Roger, what's on your mind today?
Thank you for helping KBCS here in Seattle get some liberal, much-needed information out.
Always a pleasure. KBCS is a great station.
And it has national native news and news from Japan. So, those things are not normally heard on NPR, which I listen to a lot as well.
Yeah, no, KBCS is worthy of your financial support. What's on your mind today, Roger?
Well, I wanted to talk about how not only what you say, get out and be a Democrat, as best you can, whether it's just by donation or actually getting out and joining the party and doing stuff, but I think we all should talk to the never-Trumpers, those Republicans that are hidden right now because they're afraid of being overturned in the primary. I think they should get a backbone and support democracy. At every public appearance, the Democrats should loudly ask, this Democrat who's running for your office, do they support rapists, cop killers, fraud, waste and abuse, fatalities in the third world, or your favorite obscure federal program like the one from the Consumer Product Safety Commission that just was told to shut down. Otherwise, Republicans are more likely than not to go the way of the Whigs and the Wobblies. So if you want to put a rant on your page, that would also might give people some ideas.
Yeah, that's a good one, Roger. That's a good one. Thank you. Thanks for calling and making those points. Well said. Maverick in Edmonds, Washington. Hey, Maverick, what's on your mind today? Also listening.
Hey, Tom, you can wish me happy 60th birthday.
Well, happy 60th birthday, man.
Well, thank you very much. Give me just a second, and I'll shut off this noise. I want to tell you about the rally that I went to on Wednesday. It was in Everett, Washington. I had a couple of senior neighbors of mine, both about 80, sweet, sweet, sweet people, and they invited me because they knew I had a day off. And about 100 people showed up, and we had 4 speakers. I think it was Indivisible that was kind of organizing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to tell you, this it was disappointing in a lot of ways, and it made me angry.
Why?
We had, the speakers were, I think I hate saying bad things about people unless they're celebrities, but they didn't have any sparks. There was no passion. There was no flames. It was like Chuck Schumer reading like he always does.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I think one of them read a letter from George Washington to his troops for 10 minutes. And every time a car would go by and toot the horn, the crowd would get excited and start shaking their signs and everything. And I'm going, this place is just dying for a spark. And
so did you provide it?
The media background. Beg your pardon?
Did you provide a spark? Did you assert your
sure
leadership
did.
skills?
I waited until the 4 speakers. I'm sorry, Tom, what?
Did you assert your leadership speakers, become one of the speakers, or skills rather, become one of the speakers?
Tom, it's been 20 years since I've spoken in front of a crowd because I got out of the radio business. But yeah, I waited. I got up there. She said, you got 2 minutes. I said, I only need 1. This is how it's done. And I turned into Howard Beals for a few minutes.
That's great. That's great.
And got the whole place going, and people high-fived me and slapped my back and stuff. And
that is great, man.
They want me to come back and do something. So
keep it up. Keep it up, and spread it.
Yeah.
Do it everywhere. Thanks, Maverick. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So between his tax cuts and crashing the debt ceiling and shifting billions of Treasury dollars into crypto and tariffs and all this other stuff, Trump is threatening to crash our economy. And
he doesn't seem to be particularly worried about that. Why would that be? Well, first off, economic disasters are great excuses to cut taxes. Both Reagan and George W. Bush used recessions as their excuse to stimulate the economy by cutting trillions from the taxes of billionaires. Secondly, economic crises increase the tolerance for strongman governments. Hitler rode to power in Europe based on the Great Depression. And third, billionaires make a fortune when there's a market crash because they can buy all the stock that average people are trying to unload from their 401ks to pay the damn rent. There's a whole article about this that lays the whole thing out over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Crashing the Economy, Trump's Blueprint for Power and Profit. Check it out.
They cheer in the streets, they wave their flags high. A strong hand to guide them, a savior alive. They whisper the slogans, they chant with the crowd. But don't raise a question, don't think it too loud. Step by step, the lines start to blur. Truth fades to static, justice deferred. The doors close tighter, the walls start to lean. The past gets rewritten on glowing screens. They think they are free, but for how long? When silence is safety and right is now wrong. The cages are built all at once in a day. You wake up too late when there's no way away.
Welcome back. 24 minutes past the hour. Donald Trump signed an order pausing enforcement of a law called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the FCPA. And this is a real problem, what he's doing here. I mean, you know, embracing Rod Blagojevich and Eric Adams, two corrupt Democrats, and saying, okay, everything's good with you guys. He's just embracing corruption. 30 years ago or thereabouts, I was working for an international relief agency, Salem International. And we went, myself and Horst von Heyer, we went to Haiti to talk about, you know, acquiring some property there, some land there, to run a program, a relief program, you know, for extremely impoverished people. And we met with the minister. I forget his actual title, but he was kind of the equivalent of the Home Secretary or the Secretary of State. You know, the guy who deals with other governments and things like that. And a very friendly guy. And, you know, in his office in the Capitol building there, I think it was in Port-au-Prince. And the first thing he asked us for was a bribe. And we just had to say, I'm sorry, we don't pay bribes. You know, we operate in countries all over the world, mostly third world countries. But, you know, we don't pay bribes. And he was like, then you can't do your work here in Haiti. And, you know, we will stop you. And by ending the law again, now this was a German organization, so they weren't covered by this American law. Now, if we had been an American charity, I could have simply said, I'm sorry, I'm an American, I can't by law do this. Now, do you want our help or not? But now, every tin pot dictator in the world is going to be saying to every business, you know, they're going to be saying to Coca-Cola and to Ford Motor Company and whatever, hey, you want to sell your cars? You want to sell your soft drinks? You want to sell your pharmaceuticals in our country? Grease my palm. And now that it's no longer illegal to do that, these companies are going to start doing it, which means that the companies that don't do it are putting their executives' lives in danger and you know, certainly the integrity of their operations. This is absolutely criminal. I mean, this law was passed back in 1977, and it makes it illegal for American companies to pay bribes to do business in other countries, and vice versa, for other countries or other companies to pay bribes to do business here. And Trump just shut this down?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It makes you wonder which countries Don Jr. and Eric want to bribe in order to get Trump hotels. Today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Stand Up, Struggle Forward by Sanyika Shakur. This is a book that was written back in the late 90s, but it's still very, very timely. This is from the second chapter titled Class Antagonisms Inside the Fundamental Contradiction of National Oppression. Having just passed the 19th and quickly approaching the 20th anniversary of the LA Rebellion, we should be reminded here of what Rodney King whimpered as he stood in front of a bank of microphones surrounded by class enemies and neo-colonial politicians. We should remember how he'd been dressed in that non-threatening cardigan sweater, white shirt, and black tie, how his hair had been tortured into submission by a jerry curl. We should reflect as well upon how timid and spooked he looked, and on how concerned and stern those who flanked him were as well. That was a Kodak moment. It was staged to foster an image of contrition and resignation, submission, a victim. Rodney King had been led to believe, through a bourgeois sense of reasoning, that the rebellion was really about him, that the reason new Africans and Mexicanos took to the streets of South Central was the result of his filmed beating. That, of course, is typical of mechanical bourgeois thinking. What it's not typical of, however, is someone from the hood. And this cuts both ways. No one in the hoods and barrios ever thought it was about Rodney King. We'd all seen the film over and over like everyone else, but that was par for the course. We'd always seen that, long before anybody caught it on tape. Actually, we'd experienced much more than that. Why, it's safe to say that the hoods had gone to war with each other in vicious waves of internal, intra-class combat. For much less than that, though, because of a general colonial mentality which prevents the challenging of bottom-up oppression, the same hood forces will not, in any systemic way, wage war on the pigs, or for freedom, nationalism. Rodney King alone and of his own accord would not have thought to hold a press conference to ask the asinine question in the form of a whimpering request, can't we just all get along? The fact of the matter is, we are getting along. New Africans and Mexicanos are getting along just fine. What we couldn't understand was why he was admonishing us for getting at the exploiters of our communities. The impression he gave, with his handler's hands up his back like a ventriloquist troll, was that a race riot was going on, as if we had all begun to kill each other or burn and rob each other's homes. His handlers compelled him to send up a false flag, a diversion. But you see, this was the very thing that exposed the class interests and reactionary politics of the Uncle Toms that had been designated to handle him, and by extension, us. Let's go back for a minute. Let's talk social development, aka history. There exists a fundamental contradiction in our lives that, like an elephant in the room, no one wants to acknowledge. As a consequence of the war waged upon various African nations by European powers, those of us captured and kidnapped were taken out of our own self-determining social developments and violently forced into Euro-American history. This is not simply a clever play on words. This is a reality. We lost the ability to control our own destiny. Read that again. From that time until now, the fundamental basic contradiction between the U.S. oppressor nation and our own oppressed and colonized nation has been the governing imperialist relationship, which is to say, us not being in control of the qualitative factors that determine our lives as a people, as a nation. Our tradition of struggle against this fundamental contradiction has taken many forms, some hidden or obscured, some open and hostile. But all of these have been open to resolve the fundamental contradiction and to regain our independence. While there have been some bona fide struggles to resolve the contradiction, there have also been reactionary neocolonial struggles waged by internal enemies loyal to the oppressor nation and culture that have tried time and time again to subvert and control our destiny for the benefit of the capitalists. They've come among us, always imposed from above, stirring up emotions and giving lip service to progress, equality, justice, and prosperity. These always within the colonial confines of the oppressor's arrangements, and none collectively ever materialize, because without a resolution of the fundamental contradiction, that is the freeing of our productive forces from U.S. imperialism and the governing of our own affairs, we'll remain a minority within the American system as opposed to a majority in our own, and subjected to the established bourgeois social contract, i.e. colonialism, neo and post. We can parade all through the empire with black congressmen, black mayors, black governors, black police chiefs, black Supreme Court justices, hell, even a black president. And absolutely nothing will alter the genocidal relationship that governs our national oppression here, because the blacks are part of the colonial apparatus. They have a strategic alliance with the capitalist imperialists to act as go-betweens in our oppression and exploitation. This is a conscious class stand. The black petty bourgeois is not innocently confused, like, say, Mrs. Jackson across the street is, about our national oppression, about the existence and subjugation of New Africa. They are well-read, have traveled in our experience. They've just chosen sides against us and in favor of our historical enemies. And the sooner we recognize and internalize this, the better off we'll be. Black ain't nothing but a color. As a designation of our national identity, it has played out. It is a superficial understanding at best and a foolish and dangerous analysis at worst. We have no collective control over the qualitative factors which determine our lives. We do not, in other words, control our destiny, not as a people or a state. The book is Stand Up, Struggle Forward by Sanyika Shakur.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at tom.hom.tv. Check it out.
Trump's picked his team, a billionaires club, claiming they're here to drain the swamps up. But look who's leading, it's all a facade. They're tearing down the nation, leaving its scars. Marco at state, pushing hard lines. Pam at justice, ignoring the signs. They call it greatness, we all see this ain't a cabinet, it's a travesty. Welcome to Trump's wrecking crew, where the rich get richer and we get screwed. No law, no truth, no democracy, just greed, corruption, and hypocrisy.
Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. Just two quick stories here, and then I'll pick up your calls. The U.S. Cyber Agency. Now, this was created during the Obama administration because Russia was interfering in our elections so aggressively. And, you know, so little was being done about it by our social media companies that, you know, we created this U.S. Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency. Now, their job wasn't just to oversee our elections. The U.S. Cyber and Infrastructure Agency also protects the nation's critical infrastructure. I wrote about this in The Hidden History of Big Brother, how Russia and China were actually inside our dams and our nuclear power plants. And the Russians cut off a dam hoping to flood a downstream area apparently as a test, but they got the wrong dam. It's an interesting story. Like I said, it's in the book. But you know, this is what the Cybersecurity Agency does, is it looks for infrastructure, dams, nuclear power plants, banks, and voting systems. And this is CISA, is the cyber agency. And Trump just shut it down. It's just, he just put all the staffers on leave. State election officials, both parties, have defended CISA's work to help secure election offices. Kentucky Secretary of State Michael Adams, a Republican, said the agency's work has been particularly valuable for county clerks in his state. Trump and his allies remain angry that CISA, this agency, said that there was no hacking from external sources of the 2020 election. In other words, the 2020 election wasn't stolen. And so he's shutting it down. Insane. Meanwhile, Democrats in the Senate have launched a new website, a whistleblower portal, to expose Trump's lawlessness. And this is pretty cool stuff. In fact, while I'm doing this, let me see if I can get the actual portal URL here. But this is here we go. Yeah, it's democrats.senate.gov/whistleblowers. And it's a form you fill out, you know, first name, last name, organization, email, phone number, nature of complaint, retaliation, wasteful spending, fraud, criminal activity, other, agency or organization involved, please explain your whistleblower complaint. And boom, it goes off to the Senate Democrats. Chuck Schumer and Gary Peters wrote to federal employees telling them about the new portal. You know, and they noted, as Senate Republicans refuse to fulfill their constitutional duty to provide a check on the executive branch, Senate Democrats remain steadfast in our commitment to uncovering the truth. Now, Trump has fired nearly a third of all the inspectors general, the people who are supposed to uncover waste, fraud, and abuse. So, you know, here we are, the waste, fraud, and abuse paradise of the world. This is a good step. It's a good step in the right direction. So what's on your mind? Andy in Wilmington, Delaware. Hey, Andy, what's up?
Great to talk to you, Tom. I'll get right to it. I'm going to talk about tariffs, the implication of the tariffs on steel and aluminum. But I just want to start by saying, I think it's currently we have about a 4% unemployment rate in this country. Am I close on that?
It was exactly 4% last month, yeah.
Okay, which is considered full employment by most economists.
Yeah, typically anything between 3 and 4% is full employment, yeah.
So anyway, Trump puts tariffs on these metals that we import, steel and aluminum, with the intention of creating American jobs, I think. But what the result of that is going to be is it takes a long time to ramp up capacity to replace that steel and aluminum. And I want to ask you, do we have the capacity to replace our imports of steel and aluminum, to manufacture them at this point?
I don't believe so, but and what you're pointing out, Andy, is why if you're going to put on tariffs, you should do it gradually, and you should do it through Congress, not just through executive order, so it can't be reversed by the next guy, so that the steel companies who are looking at the cost of, you know, hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars to build new steel plants know that in 4 years the rug isn't going to get pulled out from under them when the administration changes.
Exactly my point, Tom. So the result of this action is, without a doubt, it's going to be inflationary.
Oh, yeah.
Because what will happen is everybody's going to be nervous. Who's going to build a new steel plant if they don't know what's going to be happening in the next 4 years or so? So we're just going to suck it up, pay the extra money, and keep importing. And this is what happens when you do a knee-jerk sort of tariff policy where it's not thoughtful. You're not thinking about, well, how are we going to pick up the slack here? And number one, even if we do pick up the slack and manufacture here in the United States, we can't do it cheaper. It's going to be more money.
Yeah.
And also, the reason I mentioned 4% unemployment is because they consider that full employment because when there's those few jobs, I mean, there's plenty of people working. Employers need to have a pool of employable people, and that's what that 4% is. So if we're at 4% unemployment, we got a lot of people working, and they need to have that extra small pool of folks to fill in the blanks. So It's just such a bad idea out of so many bad ideas.
No, I totally get it, and I'm a fan of tariffs, but this is not how you do them. And you know, I've been advocating tariffs for years and years and years. But again, Trump is doing it stupidly, as he often does. You know, so many other things. And
Amen.
You know, so yeah, I believe. Yeah, I mean, you know, Trump inherited an extraordinarily powerful economy in 2017 when he first became president, and then he destroyed it when he left office. We were in a depression or a recession almost as bad as the Great Depression, the Republican Great Depression. And now he's, for the second time, has inherited a rip-roaring economy, And I predict that by the end of his term, 4 years from now, our economy is going to be in the crapper. But we'll see. We'll see. Andy, frankly, I think we're going to see a serious recession probably within the next 6 months. But, time will tell. Andy, thank you for the call. And let's just add, by the way, the billionaires love recessions because during recessions, particularly deep recessions, particularly really bad, like major market crashes, because what that does is it increases unemployment, which then causes average working people who all have 401ks, not all, but who have 401ks now, to dump their stocks at a loss so that the billionaires who are always sitting on piles of cash can buy that stock. They don't care if the market goes down. It's a buying opportunity. They make I've documented this several times at Hartmann Report that the 1930s, the 1950s, the 1970s, the 1980s, each one of those serious recessions were times when the billionaire class made the most money. They make more money during recessions than they do during normal economic times. So they want the market to crash, in my opinion. And we'll see.
Hey, Tom, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Watch what happens to the burned up real estate in Southern California.
As a leading indicator or a bellwether of what?
Of huge amounts of properties being purchased by huge corporations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this will be another golden opportunity for Wall Street. I mean, it's the equivalent of a market crash. Go in, buy cheap, build houses, turn them into rental units, and make a fortune. Yeah, I think you're right, Andy. Andy, thanks for the call. Matt in Seattle. Hey, Matt, what's up?
Hey, Tom, longtime listener. You've been a bright spot on my dial since the Air America days.
Well, thank you.
First-time caller.
Thank you.
I am calling because, as you always say, we mustn't give in to despair. I don't think you coined that, but you always say
No, I
it.
stole it from Bernie.
It's really important. You're probably familiar with the phone app Nextdoor. It's pretty popular among communities around. And I cannot tell you how many times I see people posting, why are there no local protests? Where are the activists? Where are the signs? And I fear that even activists such as myself and my wife and everybody I know and hang out with, we're falling into our silos through our phones and through the internet, and the grassroots organic stuff just isn't happening out there.
Yeah, the charge you used to get out of showing up in the streets is now being discharged by posting on social media, giving people the feeling that they've done something when, in fact, they really haven't. And particularly if they post on Facebook or Twitter or X, it doesn't even get, a fraction of the viewership it would get if it was a right-wing post because they've tilted their algorithms.
Right. So we're preaching to the choir at this point. Yeah. And while that doesn't hurt, I don't think it helps enough.
Yeah.
So
what's your solution?
So my solution is I was up late last night, just consternating, just worried about what's happening to our country. It's such a rapid tack. And another person posted on Nextdoor basically what I had already mentioned. And I said, well, heck, let's do something about it on a local level. So I'm organizing a gathering at Bergen Place Park every Saturday at noon from this week moving forward.
Cool, in Seattle.
Bring your friends, bring your family, make some signs, totally grassroots and completely organic.
Cool. Noon every Saturday in Bergen Place Park, you said?
Bergen Place Park. It's right on Market Street in the heart of Ballard at Market and Leary. It's where those big, weird mushroom sculptures are.
Okay. All right. Great. In Seattle. Matt, good luck.
Yep.
Give us a shout from time to time. Let us know how it's going, would you?
You betcha. Betcha. You'll hear from me again, Tom. Thanks
a lot, Matt. Yeah, have a good one.
Keep up.
And keep up the great work yourself, too. 46 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann program, helping you win the water cooler wars.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. Let's see here. Charles in Cloverdale, California. Hey, Charles, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure. What's up?
So, you've already mentioned a number of times the intervention of billionaires and corporations into our government and all of the guardrails that are supposed to keep those situations from happening, also being removed. But for the last many years, I think globally, we've noticed a massive right-wing shift in global politics. And we know that Elon Musk, for example, intervened in our election, helped Trump get elected.
To the tune of $277 million, apparently, yeah.
Yes, and how we are observing all of the Republican politicians that just completely have folded and are Trump's yes men. And I'm wondering, do you think it's possible that Elon Musk, if he's able to have unlimited cash to intervene in our election, and then also in places like Germany and the UK, what's to stop him from just, hey, Republican politician, I'm going to change your life. All you have to do is do what Trump says. What's to say that all of them have not been completely just tainted by billionaire money, corporate money? And also, do you think that this is a much bigger picture where they're doing it in other countries and there's this, what seems to be a collaboration between right-wing governments? What do you think about that? Do you think I'm just totally tinfoil hat crazy?
No, yes to all of that, Charles. What you're seeing here in the United States, since the Supreme Court, blew up most of our regulations around money and politics, is that both Republicans and Democrats are terrified that if they get out of line, if they speak out too loudly, if they are too successful in against Trump or Musk, next election, Elon Musk will come into their district or into their state and just drop 20, 30, 50, $100 million and just wipe them out. I mean, we saw AIPAC do that with 3 good progressive Democrats in the last election. And we've been seeing billionaires be doing that for some time now. Other countries, most other democracies do not allow unlimited dark money like we do. You're going to start seeing, I know one European country, and forgive me, I don't recall which one it was. I just caught the headline day before yesterday. But one European country has already passed new legislation to keep billionaire money out of their politics. I am predicting that more will be tightening up those rules. But Musk has already said that he's going to give an enormous amount of cash to the right-wing party in Great Britain. And he spoke at the AFD conference in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think he's not content to simply take over America. He wants to be emperor of the world. It certainly looks like to me. Charles, thanks for the call.
Sure, Thank you.
Yeah, good talking to you. 51 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Richard Nixon and Spiro Agnew both took cash bribes while they were in the White House. Since then, the Supreme Court, or at least 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court, made it a lot easier for politicians to take bribes with their Citizens United decision, which basically legalized political bribery as long as it's done through campaigns or PACs or super PACs. But for some people, there's just never enough money, right? Donald Trump has been running small-time hustles to make money for decades, selling sneakers, Bibles, steaks, vodka, water. But now he's hit the big time. He's got these fungible tokens, right? These fungible crypto assets, which are basically just digital pictures of Donald Trump that say fight, fight, fight. And he has turned them into an $8 billion machine. His wife is in on this too, with his Trump coin. It's a new way that foreign powers and billionaires in the United States can just shovel money into Donald Trump's pocket. There's a whole article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled Presidential Payola, The Evolution of Political Bribery. Check it out.
Elon's in D.C. whispering deals, shaking hands, pulling strings, greasing the wheel of education, cut it down to size. Keep them dumb, keep them blind, feed them AI lies. He ain't building rockets, he ain't building cars. He's buying up laws, playing God with the czars. Bureaucrats fold, pockets getting fatter while he codes the future, controlling the chatter. What does Musk want? What's he really after? DC's on a leash, bowing to the master. Power ain't enough, he's the puppet caster, flipping the switch on democracy faster.
There you go, 53 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. John in Minneapolis. Hey, John, what's up?
Yes, I just wanted to say that we can't normalize this coup. And, you know, speaking of public broadcasting, I watched the NewsHour just yesterday, and it was so softball, you know, like, oh, well, we really don't know what's going on, and this is a strong, you know, president, and we just need to see this all work out.
They're terrified of being sued.
Yeah, and, you know, it's just pathetic because we've spent literally millions and millions, maybe, you know, supporting them. I still give to them, but I just wanted to say people need to give to programs like yours. They need to, you know, support free speech TV. They need to target, you know, how they spend their money on, you know, I guess, entertainment and also on news. And it's really important because we're in the first stage of the coup. The next stage is where he's going to ignore the courts. And then, you know, I have a question for you. What do we do then? You know, I mean, we can get out in the streets, but I'd like to see the Democratic Party literally, you know, physically block things. You know, like we need to save this democracy.
Yeah.
This is, you know, against the rule of law. And if you speak to anybody who, and I'm sure you have, I've known people that have lived through fascist regimes, and, you know, the people like the Proud Boys, they become the brown shirts and the SS, just beating the crap out of people and killing people. Is this what we want, if, you know, for our children, for our communities? And you're absolutely right. You repeat it and say it many times, and I agree. You have to also get involved more than calling in like I'm doing right now. You have to actually be involved in politics at the community level, which I am and have been nearly all my life. So anyway, that's all.
Yeah. The way I see this playing out, thank you, John. The way I see this playing out is Donald Trump defies a court order. For example, right now, he's supposed funding to the National Institutes of Health, right? There's been 2 court orders to do that. He has not yet done that. So the court then, you know, they can't go after him because the Supreme Court has said that he can break the law as long as it's an official act and it doesn't matter. But he's not the guy who actually writes the checks. He's not the guy who runs, you know, the Treasury Department. He's not the guy who runs the national, you know, who's the head of the National Institutes of Health. That's some other guy who doesn't have immunity. So then the federal judge goes to that guy, that 2nd, 3rd, 4th level down from Trump, and says, you must write the checks or you are going to be in criminal contempt of court. And at that point, if that guy refuses to write the checks and the court then orders the Justice Department to have the U.S. Marshals arrest that guy and the Justice Department, Pam Bondi, refuses to do it, that's when you're in a full-blown constitutional crisis. That's when the government is broken. And I'm fully expecting some kind of a scenario like that to play out. It's probably going to be in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And, you know, all hell is going to break loose, and I don't see how it's going to get resolved. I'm very concerned about this, John. John, thank you for the call. I share your concerns. We'll be back on the other side of the break here in just a moment. PBS has caved to Trump and closed their DEI program. I don't think that's going to help him. Let me tell you what Brendan Carr is up to. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Jeffrey Sachs, Building the New American Economy, Smart, Fair, and Sustainable. This is from Chapter 13. It's titled, Restoring Trust in American Governance. More than any other threat facing America is the collapse of civic virtue, meaning the honesty and trust that enables the country to function as a decent, forward-looking, optimistic nation. The defining characteristic of the 2016 presidential election is that neither candidate was trusted. The defining characteristic of American society in our day is that Americans trust neither their political institutions nor each other. We need a conscious effort to reestablish trust by making fair play an explicit part of the national agenda. We have already noted the collapse in public confidence in the federal government. The collapse of trust in each other is equally striking. For decades, pollsters have asked America whether most people can be trusted. And for decades, the proportion answering in the negative has been rising. There are probably two main reasons for this downward trend. The first is the sharp widening of income inequalities since the 1970s. The second is the widespread feeling that those at the top of the heap in income and power regularly abuse their wealth and influence. Donald Trump's relentless assertion in the 2016 campaign that the system is rigged, a claim that resonated widely despite the obvious irony that Trump himself had been a relentless rigger of the system. The system is indeed rigged for the big corporate interests, such as the drug companies that set drug prices 1,000 times the production cost. It's rigged for the large IT companies, such as Apple, that deploy egregious tax loopholes that enable them to park funds overseas in tax-free overseas accounts. It's rigged for the hedge fund managers who take home hundreds of millions of dollars in pay and then face a top income tax rate of 20%, far below what others, vastly poorer Americans, must pay. It's rigged for the investment bankers that deliberately cheated their clients and then walked away with a mere slap on the wrist, if that. And the fact that the Clintons parlayed public office and a family foundation into a vehicle for vast personal enrichment was not lost on an unhappy and distrustful electorate. Considerable social science research in recent years has given laboratory evidence to an ancient truth that power and wealth do indeed corrupt. Consider a fascinating psychology experiment recently published in Nature, a leading scientific journal. The employees of a major international bank were divided randomly into two groups, a control group and a treatment group. Both groups were given forms to fill out at the start of the experiment. The control group was asked general questions. The treatment group was asked questions about their role in banking. Then each group was asked to flip coins and report honestly how many heads they flipped, being told that a greater number of heads would lead to a higher monetary reward. The control group reported that they flipped around 50% heads, an honest report. The treatment group claimed to have flipped around 58% heads, a dishonest report that exaggerated the proportion of heads flipped. The conclusion? Simply by being reminded that they were bankers by filling out the form about banking, the treatment group was spurred on to cheat. The psychologist concluded that the business culture of banking within that representative bank was a culture of cheating and greed. One feels that America is like that today, especially at the top. This is an age of impunity, a time when the rich and powerful get away with their misdeeds and are even lauded for them in some quarters. Donald Trump met the accusation that he had not paid income taxes for years with the response, "That makes me smart." Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein met the charge that his bank had cheated its customers with the response that they were, quote, doing God's work. Hedge fund manager John Paulson was celebrated on Wall Street for his cleverness in conspiring with Goldman Sachs to bilk a German bank out of hundreds of millions of dollars. The leaked emails show how the Clintons mixed their private, public, and foundation activities and simply confirm for many unhappy Americans that this is how the system works. The United States Supreme Court has shamelessly fed this impunity. In the infamous Citizens United case, the Supreme Court shockingly equated anonymous corporate contributions to political campaigns with free speech. The court demonstrated that it had no realistic sense of how such corporate contributions have undermined the legitimacy of our political system. In a more recent case, the Supreme Court overturned the conviction of former Virginia Governor Robert McDonnell, who had been convicted of fraud and extortion for taking gifts from a businessman promoting his health products to the state. McDonnell walked away free from a shoddy and egregious abuse of office. I've noted repeatedly that other high-income countries do not face these same trends. The U.S. pattern of rising inequality, falling trust, and increasing money in politics is not simply a reflection of the times or an inevitable side effect of democracy in the 21st century. Indeed, while many other countries are caught in a similar spiral of rising inequality, falling trust, increasing corruption, many others are not. Canada, for example, has successfully avoided these extremes, even though we share a common North American economy and a 3,000-mile border. Decency and trust can be maintained even in our complicated, globalized times. While there's no magic wand to restore social trust in the United States, there are important guideposts for citizens, businesses, and public officials. I suggest 6 key steps. First, we should acknowledge the dangerous hold of the lobbyists and the super rich on the political process. While many incumbents in office today will not sever their ties with their campaign contributors, citizens should sever their ties with politicians who rely on such contributions. While many, so the book is Building the New American Economy, Smart, Fair, and Sustainable by Jeffrey Sachs.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. Some just amazing stuff here I need to share with you. The Public Broadcasting Service, PBS, public television, public radio, NPR, all that, they announced yesterday that they have caved, it was last night, that they have caved to Trump and shut down their DEI program, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office, in order to comply with Donald Trump's executive order. Now, he's ordering private businesses to do this. Can you imagine if a Democrat had ordered private businesses to do anything around DEI, how Republicans would react? Again, we're getting this milquetoast response from Democrats, but this is outrageous. And then on top of that, and here's my point around this. If PBS and NPR, think that, doing away with their diversity office is going to help them in any way with this administration, they have their head in the sand. Brendan Carr, who's the new commissioner of the FCC, is a Project 2025 author. And he has explicitly called for PBS and NPR to not only be defunded at the federal level. Now, the federal funding for NPR is only a couple percent. It's single digits. For public broadcasting television service, it's more. I think it's around 15%, or somewhere in that neighborhood. So number one, he wants to do away with that. But then secondly, where do they get their money? They get their money from running, what are called underwriting statements, where they say things like, this hour brought to you by Tom Dwyer Auto Service here in Portland, great guys with great knowledge about cars. And it doesn't have a call for action. It doesn't say, although sometimes it will have the phone number, but it doesn't say call it. There's not a verb. And there's no adjectives, typically, or very few. So, I mean, there's very specific guidelines that NPR and PBS have worked out over the years to make all this legal. And now Brendan Carr wants to essentially say, the FCC wants to say, we're going to change the rules. And we're going to change the rules in ways that are going to make it a lot harder for your underwriters to get results. I mean, if the car dealership here in Portland can't put an ad up that says, here's the name of our dealership, or here's our website, or here's our phone number, then why bother giving money to Oregon Public Broadcasting? By the way, I'm just pulling this example out of the air. I have no idea if Tom Dwyer, who is a real car mechanic here in Portland, one of the very best, no idea if he's actually buying ads on NPR, just for example. But the bottom line is that they're after NPR, and this is the strategy that Vladimir Putin did in Russia. This is the strategy that Viktor Orban did in Hungary. It's the strategy that El-Sisi did in Egypt. It's the strategy that Erdogan did in Turkey. It's this. I mean, we've seen this in country after country after country, where a democracy elects a guy who's a wannabe autocrat, and the first thing he does is he goes after the free press, the media, typically through lawsuits, but also through government action. And Trump is doing both. He's sued ABC, NBC, CBS. He's sued multiple outlets. He's sued a little newspaper in Iowa and the reporter, turning her life upside down. Why? Because they want to shut up, people like me. They want to shut up everybody who might speak out against them. And they want to turn the public broadcasting service and NPR into, if not of state propaganda, which would be their ideal situation, and they will do if they get an opportunity to. I mean, now we've got Marco Rubio over the State Department talking about how we've got to shut down Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty because they piss off Vladimir Putin. But if not turning them, PBS and NPR, into organs, state propaganda organs, at the very least, you're going to start hearing and seeing their coverage be more and more and more milquetoast, more and more deferential, more and more, well, the president seems to be taking a strong stand here, instead of, the president just broke the law. So get ready, friends. Meanwhile, Morgan J. Freeman, now, I tried to confirm this morning. I plugged it into a search engine, and it came back, yes, that this is actually the Morgan J. Freeman. His Blue Sky and Twitter accounts have both said the same thing. He says, my insurance, Anthem, Blue Shield, Blue Cross, just informed me that my cancer follow-up MRI to check spread was deemed not a medical necessity and therefore not authorized. Now, I'm pretty sure Morgan Freeman is over 65, so he must have a Medicare Advantage plan. Somebody, if anybody listening, if you're listening right now and you know Morgan, and I know that we've got a large audience in Los Angeles, I believe he lives there, tell him to get off Medicare Advantage and get with Real Medicare. Real Medicare will pay for your MRI. But this is just another example of, how we're getting screwed by big corporations. And Trump now in Project 2025, they want to, right now Elon and his buddies are in the Medicare computers. And they're going after Social Security either today or tomorrow. but they're in the Medicare computers right now, and they want to change it so that when you sign up for Medicare, instead of your default option being real Medicare and a secondary option being, oh, there's also Medicare Advantage, they want to change it so that when you call up and say, hey, I'm turning 65 and I need to sign up for Medicare, the person on the other end of the phone will say, well, which company do you want to buy a Medicare Advantage plan from? And won't even mention real Medicare. Because their goal is to kill real Medicare. And once real Medicare is dead, it's dying right now. It's like 46% of all the people who are on Medicare are on Medicare, real Medicare. 54% are on Medicare Advantage. But when it gets down to 20, 30%, then they'll just say, okay, we can just shut down Medicare now. Everybody has to go to Medicare Advantage. And once that happens, the Medicare Advantage providers are going to start really putting the screws to us, because right now they have to compete with real Medicare. When real Medicare is gone, Katie, bar the door. We're going to be back to denying people based on pre-existing conditions, in my humble opinion. Meanwhile, over at Google, they have figured out, keep in mind the CEO of Google gave $1 million, Sundar Pichai, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, gave $1 million to Donald Trump's inauguration and attended the ceremony. And Google officially renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America in accordance with Trump's executive order. But now they went a step farther. A lot of people use Google Calendar. Google Calendar is a very popular app. It interfaces with, most phones, smartphones and computer systems and whatnot. And, typically it has told you about holidays. Well, Google Calendar just deleted the following. Pride Month? We don't want any queer people. Black History Month? No more black people. Indigenous Peoples Month? The hell with the Indians. Hispanic History Month? Oh, those brown people. Jewish Heritage Month? Oh, we don't need to know about the Jews. Holocaust Remembrance Day? Google has removed all of these from Google Calendar, presumably to kiss Trump's ass. I can't think of any other reason. So keep an eye on this. This is Donald Trump, step by step, move by move, order by order, snarl by snarl, is changing America. He's remaking America in his own white supremacist, male supremacist image. And it doesn't feel like a good thing to me at all. I have to burst some right-wing bubbles after the break. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's the place where smart people get their news. I'll be right back with you in just a moment. And welcome back. David in Nacogdoches, Texas. Hey, David, what's up?
Thank you for all you do, Tom. I just want to make a point. I just want to make a point of view. It's okay to protest, but if the people start protesting in massive numbers, that's going to give him a way to declare martial law. That's just my point of view. That's just what I want to make a point of view.
I think you're probably right.
Thank you for all you do.
I think you're right, David, and I think when people protest, they have to, anticipate the possibility that it may get violent, and that if our protests actually start getting large, and if they start becoming more and more systemic, happening all over the country every day or every weekend, that's when I'm expecting that the right-wingers will show up, and eventually the police, are going to be, it's going to be Vietnam, it's going to be 1960s all over again. I remember those well. I got tear gassed. I got beat up by cops. I got arrested. I spent 10 days in jail. This is the kind of thing that happens when they will not tolerate dissent any longer. So, yeah, David, I got to run, but thank you for the call. Spot on. John in Las Vegas. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, thank you for taking my call, Tom.
Certainly.
I just wanted to report, I've got a techie friend that sends out newsletters regularly, and he's reporting this morning that the three primary email services, MSN, and Microsoft, Gmail, and Apple, have all bounced anything that has political leanings to it.
No, that can't be. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying it, John.
Well, I mean, that's what he's reporting.
Yeah, okay. Well, one guy's report does not make, find me some actual evidence of it, call back, and, I'd love to know about that because, I mail out political content to over 100,000 people every morning, and I haven't seen any evidence that it's not getting through, but we'll see. John, thanks for the call. Patrick in Branchland, West Virginia. Hey, Patrick, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm alive and kicking, Patrick. Hope you are too.
Dave?
What's up?
Well, I'm trying to kick, just not very high. All right. Well, the reason why I was calling, as I told the guy that screens the calls, that I was worried about what the caller or couple before said about if the courts decide who's going to enforce it.
Go ahead.
Who's going to enforce it? But now here's what
Okay, keep going.
Here's what I really want to talk about. Since we've already discussed that one, but Elon Musk wants to be the world's first trillionaire. Now, he has control of our national treasury, and he has techies doing his bidding. Out of millions and millions of lines of code, he would only have to change one or two lines that it would take an army of people to search through and fix. But now let's think about it this way. He doesn't have to take pennies. He doesn't have to take dimes or dollars. Think about all the times when we do our taxes that we end up in the thousands place.
Yeah. Well, just the data he's already stolen or acquired or whatever, appropriated. Just that data is worth probably billions of dollars, Patrick. On top of
didn't the guy do it with gas here not too many years ago, and it took him a long time to catch him?
Yeah, exactly. Patrick, thank you. Thank you very much for the call. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. America is suffering from an epidemic of bullying. And one of the things we know is that culture, including bullying, flows from the top down. We've seen studies where when issues of, for example, being gay or transgender are being debated in the public, gay and transgender kids in school are more likely to be bullied. When racial issues are being discussed, people of minority races are more likely to be bullied. Well, now we've got a man who has literally built his career on being a bully, Donald Trump, as president, or was president, as candidate. And he is driving this insane bullying campaign and using it as a political weapon across the United States. And it's contagious. It's dangerous. There's an entire article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled America's New Epidemic, A Nation Overrun by Bullies. Check it out.
We crossed the sea to break the chains, left behind the tyrant's reign. No more kings, no golden thrones. We built a land that stood alone. But here they come, cloaked in greed, buying power, planting seeds, whispering lies through stolen screens, turning truth into a fever dream. Then we fought a revolution to fight people like this. With an ironclad fist, they stole the courts, they're muzzling the press, and if we don't stop them, there'll be nothing left.
We're about 21 minutes past the hour. Conservatives, NewsGuardRealityCheck.com is a great website that basically looks at BS memes that are out there and debunks them. And what I find most interesting about this is that NewsGuard purports to be a completely unbiased, nonpartisan, non-political We're just finding the BS lies out there and debunking them. But there's basically no BS lies on the left. All of these things that get debunked are on the right. Why would that be? Well, maybe because, the left actually cares about the American people and the right is shilling for billionaires and fossil fuel industry and so they've got a lot and tax breaks, and so they've got to basically lie to keep people distracted. So here's a few of the lies that got busted just in the last 48 hours. Conservative commentators are advancing bogus accusations about the U.S. Agency for International Development, claiming to have uncovered wasteful and corrupt spending. Trump tweeted or truthed, "Looks like billions of dollars have been stolen at USAID and other agencies, much of it going to fake news media as a payoff for creating good stories about Democrats. The left-wing rag known as Political seems to have received $8 million. And he goes on like this. A closer look. This narrative appears to have originated with a February 5th X post by conservative commentator Benny Johnson. Johnson's post stated, "Now we learn Politico, a news company which spent the last 10 years trying to destroy the MAGA movement, has been massively funded by USAID." Now this post, which was incorrect, received 11.6 million views and 227,000 likes in one day. Musk's algorithm must have been pushing it really hard. 11.6 million views. Over on X, Musk posted a screenshot of Trump's Truth Social, saying, "It looks like billions of dollars have been stolen at USAID." Actually, Politico got $44,000 from USAID, and that was for subscriptions to a newsletter called E&E News, Energy and Environmental News, that was being used by the agency, as an information source. So $44,000, big difference from 8 million or 8 billion. Yeah, billions. Now, the second one, supporting child sex trafficking. USAID was reported to have paid the late convicted sex offender and disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein $265,000. Well, it turns out that there's this guy named Jeffrey Epstein. By the way, this started with another conservative ex-user, a guy named Hustlebitch, who shared the screenshot in a post captioned, "Jeffrey Epstein was being paid by USAID as a director." And again, this post, in one day, this post got 202,500 views. Turns out there's actually a guy named Jeffrey E. Epstein who works at the Kaiser Foundation Health Plan. He is a director. He is paid a little over $200,000 a year, which is not unusual for directors at giant health insurance companies. And he's got nothing to do with the predator Jeffrey Epstein, and he's not being paid by USAID. He's being paid by the Kaiser Foundation. It's incredible. I mean, when you think about this, these guys will lie about anything. Here's another one. Pro-Russian sources amplified by right-wing U.S. commentators are falsely claiming that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky used 14.2 million euros in Western military aid to purchase Adolf Hitler's Eagle's Nest, the official Nazi retreat built for Hitler atop the Bavaria. This originated with a guy named John Mark Dugan. John Mark Dugan is an American who moved to Russia to produce propaganda for the Kremlin. He's paid by the Kremlin to produce online propaganda. And he posted this, and then it was promoted on X by It's the Doctor on February 5th. Exposed, Zelensky used 14.2 million euros to buy the legendary Eagle's Nest, blah, blah, blah. And the claim is baseless. It's a part of NewsGuard says, appears to be part of a long-running Russian disinformation campaign aimed at portraying Zelensky as corrupt and misusing Western military support to amass a personal fortune. And the newspaper that published this is not an authentic local German news site. The site is part of a network of 102 AI-generated German-language websites that NewsGuard and German nonprofit investigative newsroom Corrective previously linked as Russian disinformation sites. NewsGuard also discovered, now this is amazing, leading up to the 2024 election here in the United States, 171 fake local news sites that Dugan similarly launched in the U.S., spreading lies about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's incredible. It's just incredible. They just lie through their teeth. And the MAGA people, these poor suckers, you know, just like, you know, they gave Steve Bannon all that money he's pleading guilty to today, they just lap it up.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So what's on your mind today? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of this break. Stay with us. It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Seize the Time, the story of the Black Panther Party and Huey P. Newton by Bobby Seale. This is from page 85, a subchapter titled Huey Backs the Pigs Down. And there are a few words in here that I'll be filling in, as it were. They're walking, he says, one day as we were walking out of the office, I guess we'd been there about a month or so, a pig passed by. He saw us coming out of the office with shotguns and pistols on our sides. About 6 or 7 of us came out of the office there in the daytime, and we looked at the pig as he passed by, and he jumped on his radio because he saw us coming out of the office with these pieces and stuff. We had just finished field stripping weapons, learning about 00 buckshot, learning about the 9mm and the .45, and having a political education session. We had a .45 and a .357 Magnum in the group and a couple of M1s. We had 3 or 4 shotguns by then. We bought up guns like a son of a bitch then. The pig went down 2 blocks and turned around, came back up the other side of the street. They were building rapid transit, BART, right down from Grove Street there, and we went up the other side of the boulevard and came back. We readily assessed that the pigs were ready to see what the F was happening, that this pig had radioed in, and he was running it down, how he had, quote, seen some N-words come out of a place here with some guns and blop, blop, de bloop, etc., come out of this office with guns and stuff. He was radioing into other pigs to help get him. Huey had his father's car that day, and he goes through that whole thing. So anyhow, the police pull him over, and Huey got in the car, and the pig came up to the window. You have any driver's license? So Huey rolled the window down. That wasn't more than a 3 or 4 inch crack in the window. Huey handed his license out the window. Is this your true name, the pig said? And Huey said, yes, that's my true name, Huey P. Newton. Is this your true address, 841 47th Street? And Huey said, yep, that's my true address, 841 47th Street. And what are you doing with the guns? And Huey said, what are you doing with your gun? This particular pig decided he wasn't going to argue, so he went back and got his little writing pad there where they fill out S-word. Your true name is Huey P. Newton? Huey said, that's right. The pig wrote it down. Your true address is 841 47th Street? Huey said, that's right. The pig then looked at his license. What's your phone number? And Huey said, 5, and stopped and wouldn't say anything else. And the pig said, 5 what? And this is when all the S-word between the pig and the party and the pigs began. Huey said, the Fifth Amendment. You ever heard of it? Don't you know about the constitutional right of a person not to testify against himself? 5, I don't have to give you anything but my identification, name, and address, so therefore I don't even want to talk to you. You can leave my car and leave me alone. I don't even want to hear you. What do you mean, the pig said. And Huey said, just what I said. The constitutional right of any man is that he doesn't have to testify against himself. And Huey had a big M1 sitting to his right with his hand on it. I had this 9mm sitting beside me, and Huey had this M1 at his side. Huey was driving. 4 other brothers were in the back seat. One of them was Bobby Hutton. They were being quiet because Huey told them to be quiet, and the pig is going crazy. He's by himself, and Huey's got all these black N-words in the car going for the MFer. Meanwhile, while the pig is trying to get bad, 3 cars drove up behind us and 1 in the front. Some more were in the driveway. Blop, 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 de blue. Then another car came in front of us. A pig jumped out of the car, walked up to our car, and said through the crack in the window with a hoggish voice trying to sound intimidating, what's going on here? And Huey said, the same basic procedures that are supposed to go on. Huey rolled the window down another 5 or 6 inches. The pigs were looking at the guns in the car. Can I see that pistol there? One of the pigs said. No, you can't see it, Huey told him. I was beginning to get skeptical about what was happening because he pointed to my 9mm pistol. Huey was on probation, and if they thought that this was Huey's pistol, I didn't know this law stuff the way Huey knew it, so I moved the pistol over beside me real close. It had been lying in the middle of the seat. I said, no, you can't see it. Huey said, no, you can't see the pistol, nor this, pointing to his rifle. And you don't want to look, and I don't want you to look at it. You don't have to look at it. Is that your pistol? He asked Huey. And I said, no, it's not his pistol, it's my pistol. I said that because I was thinking the man's going to jump on Huey because he already told me about the probation law. If he gets caught with a pistol, he's burned. But if he gets caught with a rifle, the man can't mess with him because his probation officer told him he can carry a rifle or shotgun and he couldn't stop him. The pig said, can I see it or not? So Huey said to me, I'll talk. And then he said to the pig, no, you can't see the pistol. Get away from the car. We don't want you around the car, and that's all there is to it. Well, I can ask him if I can see his pistol or not, the pig says. So I says, well, you can't see my pistol. The MFers tried to get indignant. They were blabbing and oinking to each other about who in the hell we thought we were, and Constitution my ass, they're just turning it around. Then the pig said to Huey, who the hell do you think you are? Look, damn it, Huey said. He opened the car door. This is where Huey got mad. I mean, you have to imagine this N-word. He got mad because these dogs were going to carry on and they were bracing up like they were bad. Huey didn't go for this at all. Huey got very mad. He opened up the door saying, who the hell do you think you are? In the first place, this man, pointing at the pig, came up here and asked me for my license like he was citing me for a ticket or observation of some kind. This police officer is supposed to be carrying out his duty, and here you come talking about our guns? Huey put his hand around his M1 rifle and continued, we have a constitutional right to carry the guns, and anyway, I don't want to hear it. The pigs backed up a couple of steps, and Huey was coming out of the car. Huey had his hand back in the car getting his M1. And you know, if you've ever seen Huey, he gets growly but articulate. He came out of the car with his M1. Huey knows this law so well that he wouldn't have had the one M1 loaded inside the car. So he came out of the car, he dropped around into the chamber right away. Clack, clop. Who do you think you all are anyway? Huey said to the pigs. And the pigs were all on the sidewalk harassing all the brothers and sisters who gathered around. You move on down the street, said the pig. Huey started interrupting. You don't have to move down the street. Don't go anywhere. These pigs can't keep you from observing. You have a right to observe an officer carrying out his duty. And these pigs, they listen to all this S-word, and it goes on from there. It's a great story. Seize the Time by Bobby Seale.
Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. A lot of people wonder, where did this whole right-wing movement to basically gut our freedoms and end DEI and all this other, where did this all begin? It all started back in 1951 with a book called The Conservative Mind, From Burke to Eliot by Russell Kirk. And he argued that if the middle class ever got too big, you'd see young people and women and racial minorities all get up on their hind feet and start protesting and basically screwing up America. And in the 50s, you know, even Republicans thought he was nuts. But then the 60s happened and all those protests, and suddenly Republicans thought, yeah, he's right. We've got to destroy the middle class, or at least cut it back. And that was Reagan's mandate when he came into office in 1981. There's a whole article about this. You can read all the details. It's titled The GOP's 60-Year Conspiracy to Kill Our Democracy. None dare call it treason, but I will. Over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
There's a game being played at the highest stakes, where billionaires bend and the strong man takes. A whisper here, a favor there. America's enemies pull up a chair. Spies, secrets, and sabotage, selling us out for a big mirage. Putin and Xi, they're raising a toast, while traitors at home do the most.
35 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Richard in Riverside, California. Hey, Richard, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, good morning, Tom. On my mind is something I lived through back in the 80s. It was the Reagan years, and I'm 78 years old. I remember my father being knocked off of Social Security disability, and he had to fight to get back on. I just remember looking at my father and saying, how are you going to make it? And he just didn't know.
Yeah, they quite tightened up the rules.
Oh, yeah. Well, in 1982, they knocked, it was over 490,000 people off of it, you know, after going to church on Sunday. Mm-hmm. But they also knocked another man off. His name was Ben Benitez, a Congressional Medal of Honor winner. And he had been wounded. He had a piece of shrapnel in his heart, and the Reagan boys, actually Reagan gave him honored him with the Congressional Medal of Honor. Mm-hmm. And he had severe pain and shrapnel in his heart and couldn't understand why he got knocked off. So he said, if they can do that to me, they'll do it to anybody.
Yeah.
But this actually, Donald Trump was talking about this in 2020, his first time around, and I'm sure it's going to come back and haunt the hell out of all of us.
Oh yeah, they're
And
going to be going after. Well, we'll talk with Alex about it after the break. But all the indications are that they're going to be coming after Medicare and Social Security. I mean, they've already announced that they're going after Medicaid, which is, but you know, Medicaid doesn't. It's got a large constituency, but it's mostly a poor constituency, and poor people tend not to vote in America. So I don't think Republicans.
Tom, can I ask you a question? Because my memory, I probably can Google it and get it, but I know you know about it. Didn't Reagan campaign on the deficit, that it was going to destroy our economy if he didn't do something about it? And then when he became the president, he tripled it, or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. And yes, and at the time, when we ended World War II, our debt, our national debt, was 126%, if I'm remembering correctly. It was in the neighborhood of 120 to 130% of GDP, which is where it is right now. And over the next 20 years, or I guess it would have been over the next, 40 years, 35 years, from the end of World War II until 1981, Harry Truman and Eisenhower and Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon and Jerry Ford and Jimmy Carter. Every single one of those presidents reduced the national debt. Every single one of them. They were all paying down the national debt. And it got down to the point where it was only $800 billion, less than $1 trillion when Ronald Reagan came into office. And he was yelling and screaming about $800 billion national debt. It's a crisis. You know, we got to cut government spending, quack, quack, quack. And then he does, a couple of major tax breaks for his billionaire buddies. And what does that do? It runs the national debt up to $2.4 trillion when he leaves office. So, yeah, he tripled the national debt.
Excuse me. Didn't he also take my Social Security or our Social Security and put it into his budget? In other words, there was a pie. Social Security stood by itself. And didn't he put it into his pie?
That's the best
so
of my
that
knowledge. I heard there was a lot of yelling and screaming about Social Security back in the day, particularly when Reagan, quote, reformed it. And, which included things like putting a tax on your Social Security income right now and raising the retirement age from 65 to 67. But the most common Republican freakout that I heard back then, and still hear occasionally, is that the government has borrowed your Social Security money. And there's some truth to that, because the Social Security funds are invested in U.S. Treasuries, and Treasuries are IOUs, they're debt instruments. So yeah, when Social Security puts $2.5 trillion, not much, 2.4 trillion, I believe, was the amount that was in the Social Security Trust Fund a couple of years ago. It's being paid down right now, but it was supposed to be. I mean, the whole point of this trust fund, which didn't even exist before *86, was to deal with the boomers, and this rabbit going through the python. So but it was just they had, and it's not even actually normal treasuries. There's a special kind of treasury that is distributed by the Treasury Department specifically for Social Security to invest in, and they're very, very secure. So your Social Security money is actually earning interest. Richard, I got.
You remember when Reagan started to dump government cheese into the ocean, and the World War II people said, "No, you don't.
No, I don't.
You can feed people with it." You don't recall that? No, yeah, he was going to take government cheese and dump it in the ocean because he was paying millions of dollars to store government cheese.
Oh, geez.
Keep the price up.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm 78 years old, so I have memories of not good times with Ronald Reagan, George Bush, or any of them. They're real good at lying and BSing the American people. And I'm fearful of American people now, and I'm just going to flat say it, myself included, how dumbed down we all are.
Yeah, well, our media has not helped with that, and of course, making college unaffordable and all these other things that they've done, and gutting public education. We're really suffering the consequences of 40 some odd years of Reaganomics. Richard, thanks for the call. Denise in Calumet, Michigan. Hey, Denise, what's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, nice to talk to you, but what's on my mind is the bottom line is Trump and Musk are extorting our country by fear. They have got all the Republican senators literally on their knees, quickly prostrating themselves to Trump.
Yeah.
And it's just you can't find anybody that will step forward because they're so afraid that they might get killed or their families might get killed. And I called Jack
That's not their
Bergman.
only fear. One fear
I know.
is that the Proud Boys will be turned against them. The other fear is that Elon Musk's money will be turned against them in the next primary.
Right.
They're terrified in both counts.
I called Jack Bergman's office. He's Republican up here in Michigan.
Mm-hmm. I
call him every day and talk to someone in his office and tell him, you have got to be the one to start recruiting people, go across the aisle and save this country, because otherwise you are no patriot.
Yeah.
And I tell him that every day. And I don't know what else to do. I mean, I'm doing other things too, but
yeah.
I call him every day. I've got it.
You might want to check in with indivisible.org. They're the highest profile right now of all the organizations that is doing good organizing and getting people out on the streets and making things happen and helping people organize protests and outreach. There's also an app called 5 Calls that you can put on your phone that helps you make 5 calls a day and let people know what's going on. But there are things we can do, even people who are shut in, whatever your physical or economic restraints may be, there's still a lot we can do. Denise, thank you. Thank you so much for speaking out, for the call, and for reaching out to your representative. Mark in Valley, Washington. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. About, a few weeks after Trump got reelected, I called you up and put forth the idea that I didn't think that if it looked like the Republicans were going to get swept out, that Trump would allow the midterms to go forth. And you were on the other side of that page. You thought they would. And I'm wondering, with all that's happened in the recent days, do you still feel that way?
I think the midterms are going to go forward. My concern is that voter suppression, challenges to mail-in ballots, purging people off the voting rolls in blue cities and red states is going to go, and probably is going right now as we speak, into hyperdrive. They purged 4.2 million voters last time around, just in time for the election, mostly people of color, but also people, in college towns and Social Security voters and whatnot. They purged 4.2 million people, which gave Trump the White House in 2024. I'm guessing they're going to purge a hell of a lot more than that for 2026. So I think that they're going to do it the Viktor Orban way, rather than just stop the elections, or the Putin way, which is basically to rig the elections. And we've got to be alert to that. There's so much going on that this is probably going on in the background right now. Mark, thank you for the call. It's 45 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann program. Speaking the truth, the Trump administration would really rather you didn't know all about it.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's talk media for the sane among us. I'll be right back with your calls. Welcome back. Joe in Oklahoma City. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but I was actually going to say that, it's Musk and his band of hackers that are controlling that payment system now, and that's who the criminal contempt charges should be filed against. They don't have any immunity. The other thing I thought you'd find interesting, Chuck Grassley was just on the floor of the Senate, and live on TV, he said he tells his candidates to answer questions maybe so they can't be called liars later. He said it live.
Say what?
I wanted to lighten it up.
He wants people to do what?
Chuck Grassley was on the floor of the Senate doing one of his big...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And he said he wants people to do what?
He said that he tells candidates, he was talking about people coming to his office to visit, and he said, I tell them to say maybe so they can't be called liars later.
Oh, to say maybe. Yeah.
So yeah. Shock there, right?
Yeah. So
in other words,
he's counseling, and this is not candidates. This is people who have been appointed to cabinet positions. Is that what we're talking about here?
That's correct. He was bragging about these assurances he was getting from people like brainworms running our health system. And he was talking about those candidates, including Cash Patel and these people like this. And he said, I tell them to say maybe to the question so they can't be called liars later. I just was like, whoa, I'm not surprised. But I did want to lighten it up just a little bit to ask you if you've ever kind of spent a little time looking at the Nostradamus quatrains.
Oh, years ago, 30, 40 years ago, yeah.
Okay. Maybe refresh and look back over that. But if you'll remember, there's a reference in the quatrains about like a third Antichrist, etc.
Yeah.
And he uses a name, and the name is Mobus. And I thought to myself, Mobus, Musk, Mobus. Because, you know, we always use those little quirky things, right?
Uh-huh.
And it also goes on to say that he would have to be a water sign. Well, Musk, or should I say Mobus, is actually a water sign. And it says he will take power at the time of a comet. And just recently, Atlas Comet G3 just came through on January 27th. I thought that was
well, there's always a comet coming through, Joe. But what birth sign is Musk?
He's I don't remember his sign, but he's a Cancer, and that's a water sign.
Yeah, Cancer is a water sign. Yeah.
Now, the G3 comet that just came through was super, super close and very notable. It went very close to the sun. But I will just say, if I sub in the name here, it says Musk then quickly at this time will commit mass murder upon men and beasts, one horrible slaughter. Then one shall see a coup of vengeance upon all. There is a great taking of lives. Tranquility will be disrupted. A German prince upon a gilded throne, hello Trump, will ignite flames of war between the sons of Isaac and the sons, well, that's Christians and Muslims. I'm just saying, I'm lightening that. I'm trying to lighten it up.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, you can read an awful lot into the quatrains, just like you can Bible verses and things like that, but fascinating stuff. Joe, thanks for the call. Thank you very much. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour in about a half a minute. I'll be back with more of your calls in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Well, it's the brand new Confederate States of America, plantation politics. You know, the old Confederate States, today known as MAGA America, the new Confederate States, were devoted to making America as white as possible, stripping women and minorities of political and economic power, gutting workers' rights, rigging election outcomes, their leaders nakedly taking bribes, using the phony veneer of Christianity to justify brutal policies, including slavery, making queer people invisible, reconfiguring schools for indoctrination, having their militias terrorize minorities and their opponents, and maintaining a government of, by, and for rich white men. And these are the principles, the core principles around which the modern-day GOP has reorganized itself. You can find an entire article about this that lays the whole thing out over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled The Plantation Politics of MAGA America. Is this the future we want? Check it out.
Donald Trump's got a plan.
Tom in Columbus, Ohio. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I don't know how much this has gone under the radar, but one of the things that Elon Musk's, efficiency people are doing is they've targeted the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii, which has been for 70 years been monitoring atmospheric CO2.
Right. Really? I didn't know they were going after it. Does NOAA own that or something?
This is just chilling because remember during the campaign, Trump promised the fossil fuel industries, you give me $1 billion and support me, I'll get rid of all this climate stuff.
Yeah. Well, he's doing it.
And I don't know if it's back online, but for a while, you could not get the data from the Mauna Loa Observatory.
Amazing.
And, this is just chilling.
Yeah. They're ripping our government apart.
It's, Tom, for God's sake, it's science.
Yeah. Well,
It's
these guys don't like
not a Republican
science.
figure or a Democratic figure. It's a figure of atmospheric CO2.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the fossil fuel companies don't want to let that information out. Now, all the other countries in the world monitor it. Universities monitor it. It's not going to take it away, but it's just garbage, Tom.
Yeah, I get it. I was unaware of that, Tom. I'll take your word for it. It's and I will go looking for more information on it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, just Google Musk Mauna Loa.
You got it. Thank you, Tom. Roger in Great Bend, Kansas. Hey, Roger, what's on your mind today?
Thank you, sir, for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I'd like to comment on two statements you made. The first, talking about how Trump is going after the media, but no one wants to talk about how the media has gone after Republicans for decades. And number
They
two,
have?
they blame...
Give me an example of the media going after Republicans unfairly.
they've been going after,
Just give me one example.
Going after Trump for the last, since he got elected on his first term.
Give me one example of the media unfairly or improperly or with lies going after Trump. Just one example.
Well, for one, they blamed the economy under his first term on him. When
wasn't he president?
Brings me to my second topic. Well, that brings me to the second.
So you don't have one example of the media going after Trump.
Gas hit below $1 in 2020.
Yeah, well, that's because the whole world was shut down. Come on, Roger.
Oh yeah, the whole world was shut down, but yet they want to blame Trump for the state of the economy when all the states shut down. Trump didn't shut down the country.
I don't see give me an example of media blaming Trump. Reporting on reality is not blaming.
Well, no, every single day they're making up stories and lies.
Give me one example.
They're talking.
I can give you, I just gave you three major examples of lies that the right is promulgating that Elon Musk is amplifying in the last segment, 25 minutes ago. I gave you three major examples. Please give me one example of a Democratic lie that is being promulgated by the media. One.
They're saying Trump and his administration does not have the right to look at personal information under DOJ, that they're not elected representatives, but yet the IRS looks at our information.
How is that a lie?
Social Security looks at information. How is that a lie?
Yeah, do you want 19-year-old hackers who are affiliated with Russian websites, a guy named Big Balls, looking at your personal Social Security information and your personal banking information? Do you want them looking at your health information over on the Medicare site? Do you want them looking at our nuclear secrets? One of those guys got fired for...
There's an 18-year-old working for the IRS and Social Security looking at all of our information. What's the difference?
Well, if it's a civil servant, there's a whole system of, number one...
Well, that's what these are. These are servants.
No, they're not civil servants. They haven't passed a civil service exam. They haven't been vetted. They haven't had a security check. No, and again, this is not a Democratic lie. This is a simple fact, Roger. I'm still waiting for you to inform me about how the press is going after Trump in ways that are not honest, ethical, or truthful.
You haven't been listening to the media making up all these lies and everything. They're talking about how
what lie did the media make up, Roger?
Prices of goods.
You don't think the prices of goods are up?
Well, yeah, under Biden.
Well, sure, and the media reported that. It was one of the reasons Biden,
Okay, the media, just last week, the media reported the eggs are up.
Yes.
Blaming Trump for it.
So
eggs were up in December.
So please name one media outlet that blamed Trump for the price of eggs.
CNN.
CNN.
Just last week they blamed Trump for the price of eggs.
Who on CNN?
I don't have names. I listen to the.
This is really weak tea, Roger. You don't think that the Republicans blame Joe Biden for the price of eggs?
No, No, I'm sure they did, but no, I didn't. I wouldn't blame Biden for the price of eggs because his bird flu. It wasn't Biden that did it.
No, and it's not Trump that's doing it either,
although
although we've got a bird flu pandemic and he's shutting down the CDC and he's taking all the bird flu information off their website so scientists can't do anything about it. I don't think he wants us to know the next pandemic. Roger, but that's just me, and I'm not the media. I'm just this show. Roger, thank you for the call. I look forward to future conversations. 57 minutes past the hour. Well, it's the top of the hour. I'll be back with you on the other side with Alex Lawson. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book in today's Thom Hartmann Book Club is by Harvey J. Kaye, Professor Harvey Kaye. Take Hold of Our History, Make America Radical Again. This is from the introduction. On December 1st, 1862, in the midst of the Civil War, just weeks before he was to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, President Abraham Lincoln delivered his annual message to Congress. Lincoln firmly believed that the United States had an historic responsibility to demonstrate to the world that people can govern themselves, make equal rights not just a self-evident truth, but a manifest one, and create a political and economic order in which working people, both white and black, are not compelled to bow to anyone, neither aristocrats nor capitalists. Empowered by tens of thousands of black slaves who were already liberating themselves from bondage by escaping to the Union lines, and increasingly confident that the majority of his fellow Americans would recognize the truth of what he was saying, Lincoln closed his address by calling on them to see that the time had come to remember who they were and what they demanded, or what that demanded. He told them that to save the nation and all that it represented, they must live up to the nation's declared revolutionary purpose and promise, and act to radically enhance American freedom by bringing an end to slavery. This is a quote from Lincoln's address. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. We say we are for the Union. The world will not forget that we say this. We know how to save the Union. The world knows we do know how to save it. We, even we here, hold the power and bear the responsibility. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. End of quote from Lincoln. Back to Harvey. We too cannot escape history. Our own struggle to save the nation and the promise it proclaims has begun. Finally, after more than 40 years of fear-driven class war and culture war campaigns against the democratic achievements of generations, the hard-won rights of workers, women and people of color, and the very memory of how they were secured, and now both in the wake of the election debacle of 2016, which gave the presidency to the corrupt, mendacious, racist, sexist, and treacherous demagogue Donald Trump, and continued control of Congress to the formerly conservative but increasingly reactionary Republican Party, and in the face of intensified class and culture war campaigns, we the people have come not only to recognize that American democratic life is in jeopardy, but also to mobilize in hopes of saving it. Millions of us have rallied to the resistance and expressed our democratic fears and desires in action. In the historic Women's March and March for Our Lives of young people, the protests, demonstrations, and legal actions to defend the lives and rights of immigrants and refugees, the Me Too movement to combat sexual assault and harassment, the massive teacher strikes for higher pay and better funding of public schools in states red and blue, and the enthusiastic canvassing and campaigning for a blue wave to win back Congress in the 2018 midterm elections. But resistance is not enough. The time has come for us to remember who we are and what that demands. The time has come for us to embrace our radical history, the history of how a generation of Americans, high and low, and in all their diversity, not only turned their colonial rebellion into a war for independence, but also imbued American life, whether they all intended it or not, with radical imperative and impulse by declaring a revolutionary promise of freedom, equality, and democracy for all. The history of how generations of radicals and reformers served as the prophetic memory of that promise, and how generations of ordinary men and women, native-born and immigrant, struggled to make real the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and to expand not only the we in We the People, but also the powers of the people. And most especially in view of the crises we ourselves face, the history of how our greatest generations confronted and prevailed over the forces that threatened to destroy the nation and bury its revolutionary promise in the 1770s, 1860s, and 1930s and 1940s, not to mention the 1960s, by acting to make the United States, both inspired by Washington, Lincoln, and FDR, and pushing them to go farther than they might otherwise have gone, radically freer, more equal, and more democratic than ever before. The time has come to take hold of that history and make America radical again. I've titled this collection of my speeches and essays, Take Hold of Our History, Make America Radical Again, for reasons that will become obvious, and yet I cannot help but confess that if I had had to title it otherwise, I would have been sorely tempted to use, with full attribution, the title Max Lerner gave to his 1938 work, It Is Later Than You Think, The Need for a Militant Democracy. While it may not seem so, the crisis we face is no less demanding of action, urgent action, than that which confronted his generation. The book Take Hold of Our History by Harvey J. Kaye. 50,000 women.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. On the line with us, our buddy Alex Lawson, the president of Social Security Works, socialsecurityworks.org, strengthensocialsecurity.org, A Law 202 over on Blue Sky, or socialsecurityworks.org over on Blue Sky. And Alex, welcome back to the program. I understand there was a big rally at or around Social Security yesterday in D.C. Tell us about it.
Yeah, that's true, Tom, and thanks for having me. It's a lot happening in Washington, D.C. Right now. So one of them is, the Doge gang has their sights on Social Security. The landing team is already there. The person who Trump proposed to be in charge of the Social Security Administration has said he's a Doge guy. And, you know, it's just a matter of time before they show up with their servers, plug it into the system, and just steal all of our Social Security data on every person in this country. And that's not their end goal, right? They're coming after our benefits, Tom. You know that. So we were able to, in very short order, gather a few hundred people, both senators from Maryland, most of the Maryland Congressional Caucus, delegation, and get in front of the Social Security Administration building up there in Woodlawn with one message for Elon Musk: hands off our Social Security, hands off our Medicare, hands off our Medicaid. He's going to have to come through the American people if he wants to steal our Social Security benefits.
So what evidence do we have that they're actually looking at this? We know that they want to, you know, that Trump wants to do another multi-trillion-dollar tax cut for billionaires. We know that they're not going to be able to get the debt ceiling raised, or at least it's unlikely, and that Democrats aren't going to help them on this. And so the only way they can pass this tax cut is through reconciliation, you know, which can pass the House and Senate with a simple majority, but reconciliation says you may not raise the deficit. So they've got to come up with a couple of $1 trillion in government spending that they can get rid of to pay for this tax cut for billionaires. Do we have any evidence that they're specifically looking at these three programs?
Absolutely. You have to actually look at the totality of what's going on, but very clearly $2.3 trillion in Medicaid cuts, which is simply the destruction of Medicaid to pay for. I always put that in air quotes because it's just ludicrous to call reaching into one person's pockets, taking their money and giving it to the billionaire in the room that's paying for it. That's just stealing, Tom. But that is how Washington, D.C. works. And you can read about it. I mean, always check my work. Google it. You can Google Jeff Van Drew. You remember that coward? He switched parties to become a Republican because he didn't want to lose his power. And he's out there. He's saying, you know, oh, I'm nervous about the size of the Medicaid cuts. You'll read about how there is all this tension in the reconciliation package and how it's going to move forward, because they know that when the rubber hits the road, when it comes to legislation, when it comes to that tax handout, and they have to bring in Congress, that's when it becomes particularly difficult, because that's when they have to stop lying. That's when they have to say, these are the specific programs that we're going to steal from you so that Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, can afford, you know, another golden pillow to cry about his sad life into, or whatever he spends his money on. But just to be clear, the reason it feels like they're able to do so much right now in this blitzkrieg part is because it's all done through executive action. It's all done by the White House. They haven't brought in the Congress yet. And that's why it feels so fast, and it's like nothing can stop it, because the powers of the presidency are astronomical, as you know. I mean, this man can literally destroy the world with the push of a button. He has enormous power. And he is actively eroding the checks and balances that are used to restrain that power. And since the Republicans in Congress are not standing up and saying, hey, that's the power of Congress, you know, more and more authority is moving into the executive. But they do need to have a few things that have to happen with Congress. And once you get to Congress, it's a whole different ball game there, Tom, because in the House, they right now have a 0-person majority. After the special elections, they'll have a 3-person majority. And that caucus, the Republicans in the House, they're divided into 5 to 7 factions that all hate each other. So we're going to have to raise our voices and defeat the reconciliation process, the attacks on Medicaid, and they have hundreds of billions of dollars in cuts to Medicare written down. but also the threat to Social Security, not just from Elon Musk, saying he's coming after Social Security. And read his Twitter right now. He keeps calling Social Security a fraud. He keeps retweeting Senator Mike Lee, who has actively called for the destruction of Social Security. I don't know, not with you, but with like establishment media, they keep, wondering what's next in their agenda. You can just read Project 2025. They're doing it page by page. Yeah. The next thing on Social Security, create a commission so that they can get those cuts across without getting 60 votes in the Senate. But I am confident that, the rage that I'm feeling building is very real. No one voted to cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. So we are going to stand up now.
Yeah, that's absolutely remarkable. What do you think the odds are that, I understand the government funds basically run out on March 14th. What do you think the chances of a government shutdown are? That the Republicans will not be able to raise the debt ceiling, and that this time the Democrats aren't going to help them out?
What I would put a bunch of money on is that the Republicans won't be able to gather the votes in the House alone. They obviously can't do it in the Senate. But what happened all last Congress, if you remember, is, the Freedom Caucus would be like, their proposal would be like, literally go door to door and punch every person in the face. And then they would put that to a vote, and then the Freedom Caucus themselves wouldn't even vote for it, right? They could never get anything across the line. And so then they'd go to the Democrats. And in fact, the Democrats are like, well, we're not voting for that. We'll vote for our thing. And then the Democrats would pass, a spending package or a budget or whatever that was much more the Democrats' priorities than the Republicans. So it's going to be somewhere like that. It's not, they control both houses now, the House and the Senate. So, it's not going to be, it's not going to result in good things. But the Democrats have enormous leverage at these key moments, and they have to use it. And we have to demand that they use it, because I'm sick and tired of too many people in this town, Tom. They keep talking about things in a future tense, like what may happen, the constitutional crisis that's coming. And you're like, the constitutional crisis is now. The Vice President of the United States of America, a lawyer, who knows constitutional law, he's saying that the president can ignore the judiciary, that the president is freed from the constraints of checks and balances. That is an authoritarian takeover. That is a constitutional crisis, and we need everyone to take it that seriously. At the same time, Tom, politicians aren't going to save us, right? The courts aren't going to save us either. The only thing that can stop a tyrant and the tyranny that he's bringing is the people. And so until the people are out in force, raising our voices together and really shutting things down, I don't think we're going to see as much bravery as we need. The politicians are lagging indicators. They get their bravery from the people. But first, the people have to organize and fight back. And that's where the fire, the bravery, and the opposition that we need is going to come from.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders once made the point to me that the way politicians work is they typically don't get out in front with a flag and say, hey, let's organize a parade. Instead, they wait for a parade to naturally form, and when it's big enough and vital enough and active enough, then they jump in front of it with a flag and say, this is my parade. And so it's up to us to create that parade, essentially. So tell us what resources are over at socialsecurityworks.org, or where you recommend people go to learn how to become part of that parade.
Definitely, and I'll just add one thing that I learned from Marion Barry, the mayor for life from Washington, D.C., who is also MLK's left hand in the civil rights fight. He told me that the left often suffers from, when the politicians want to join the parade, the left is like, no, you get out of here. You weren't with us the whole time. And we can't do that. We have to actually be like, oh, great, wonderful. You're all welcome We'll just even pretend you're here the whole time because that's how we build power. We invite people in. So if you go to socialsecurityworks.org, you follow us on social media, the pledge campaign that we're running right now, we're demanding every member of Congress pledge no cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and we're running billboard trucks in every vulnerable toss-up Republican district where they don't take the pledge, because at any one time, we only need 3 Republicans to stop this assault on our democracy and this theft of our earned benefits.
And there's like, what, 17 Republicans who are in that category?
Yes, just in the Cook Report toss-up. And then, you know, there's lean Republican, but these are extremely tight races where these guys are, you know, their political future right now is very uncertain. That's why I brought up Jeff Van Drew. You know, these are people who are saying you can't cut and destroy Medicaid. Like, I'll definitely lose my job. That's the calculus that we have to make. We work with that. We need these members to be more afraid of losing their jobs to their constituents' anger than they are of Donald Trump and, you know, the wrath that he can bring on Twitter.
Right, or Elon Musk's money. Well said, Alex. Well said. Alex Lawson, the president of Social Security Works, socialsecurityworks.org, strengthensocialsecurity.org, socialsecurityworks.org over on Blue Sky. Alex, thanks again. Keep up the great work, my friend.
Thanks, Tom.
Always great talking with you. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So Donald Trump is telling the IRS, stop going after those rich tax cheats. We want you down on the border. Seriously, stick around. I'll be right back. And welcome back. John in Kashmir, Washington. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure. What's up?
Hey, a while back, after January 6th, I called in and spoke to, I'm sorry, I don't remember which one of them it was. It was either Mark Bocan or Rokana. And I asked them at that time what they were going to do in Congress to Trump-proof the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you remember that, out of the thousands of callers you get.
Vaguely.
But in my opinion, not much of anything was done to do that. It was obvious to me at that time that Trump would try again for the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward now to now, and we have the situation of Trump being back in the White House and the chaos that he's causing. In looking at it, in my opinion, there's only three directions this is going to go. Either we completely lose our democracy, or we somehow, by some miracle, manage through normal legal means to get control back, and maybe some Republicans switch sides and start seeing how wrong they are. Or the third scenario, we end up in a civil war. So my concern is, if we're somehow lucky enough to go through number 2 scenario, what are they going to do this time after this is over with? Are they going to continue to have the Democrats? Are they going to continue to have the same spineless response that they had before, or are they going to do something about the corrupt judges that we have in various courts in the country? Trump and Musk and various people engaged in illegal activities.
Yeah. I would hope they're more energetic than in the past.
I would hope so.
My prediction is, though, that the number one, and I'm in favor of this, the number one thing that they'll be doing is trying to get big money out of politics. That was the For the People Act, which would have overturned large parts of Citizens United. And it passed the House of Representatives with a majority vote, and it passed the Senate with a majority vote. It just got filibustered. And we could have broken the filibuster if it hadn't been that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema decided to take payoffs and sabotage, Democrats and thus the entire country. And so the reason Elon Musk was able to invest $270 million in buying the White House for Donald Trump was because of Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. I mean, it's really that simple. And so if Democrats can get a large enough majority, they'll bring that back. There's no doubt in my mind.
I would think that, along with some of the other things I mentioned, should be top of the agenda if they do, again, gain control. And there should be actual concrete action happening, legal action. Some of these people belong in prison. Just to give you a little background, I'm a retired IT person, and I know, based on what I'm reading is going on with Musk and the interference. You're in the music. This is costing us billions and billions of dollars.
Well, and it's a threat to the national security. I mean,
well, they're going to have to clean every server, every workstation, everything is going to have to be redone.
I'm with you. I'm out of time, but thank you for the call. Spot on. John, thank you. 22 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out.
The ink was fresh on his solemn vow. Trump signed the pardons, they're free somehow. The ones who stormed where the nation meets now walk away from their crimes complete. Heroes, he said, who stood for the cause as they shattered the walls of our nation's laws, turning the guilty into the brave with the stroke of a pen. Justice betrayed. Pardons of January 6th, what do they show? A nation divided with nowhere to go. No peace restored, no healing begun. Just two nations, not one, under the sun.
Welcome back, 25 minutes past the hour. So, Republicans famously do not like it when the Internal Revenue Service goes after billionaire tax cheats. In fact, for every dollar you invest in having IRS auditors go after billionaires, you make back multiple dollars. I mean, it's one of the best investments we can make, which is why Republicans are constantly trying to cut the IRS's budget. Well, now they want to go even beyond that. Kristi Noem, the new Secretary of Homeland Security, the head of the Homeland Security Department, has reached out to IRS agents and said, hey, wouldn't you love to go down to the southern border? Hey, it's summer down there, to get out of those storms up there up north and come on down. She sent a letter to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent asking if IRS agents could join her efforts down on the southern border. She wants to redirect agents from the investigative arm of U.S. Customs and Immigration Service to focus on immigration work and take steps to deputize Justice Department agents to assist. This is crazy. I mean, you know, they're just doing anything they can and everything they can to make sure that rich people don't have to pay their fair share of taxes. I mean, they do it legally with tax cuts, and now they're doing it in a way that, I mean, I suppose it's legal to say, well, hey, those IRS agents that are auditing rich people, let's just send them down to the southern border. I mean, it's so transparent. It's so obvious what they're up to, whose pocket they're in. It's mind-boggling. So what's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls right after this break. It's 27 minutes past the hour. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Exposing the con in conservative. I'll be right back with your calls. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. This is from the introduction, titled The Big Picture of Social Control versus Democracy. This book deals with two very large and often amorphous concepts, privacy and surveillance in the context of government and the marketplace. Both concepts have undergone changes over the millennia of recorded human history, and those changes have dramatically sped up and expanded over the past few centuries, starting with the widespread use of the printing press in the mid to the late 15th century, when books and newspapers began to proliferate across Europe, and in the rest of the civilized world by the end of the 17th century, civilized in quotes. The development of radio, television, and the internet in the 20th century heightened the need to define more clearly what both concepts meant and how they applied both to governments, the public sector, and to individual and corporate players, the private sector. The thought police and Big Brother are terms introduced into the popular lexicon by George Orwell in his novel 1984. Big Brother was the overweening, all-powerful government of Orwell's novel, and the thought police were those who managed to burrow so deeply into every citizen's behavior, speech, and even thoughts that they could control or punish behavior based on the slightest deviations from orthodoxy. Orwell was only slightly off the mark. Big Brother types of government and thought police types of social control are now widespread in the world and incompatible with democracy, as I'll show in more detail later in the book. Most concerning for Americans and citizens of other democratic nations, in quote, the mentality of both has heavily infiltrated both American government and corporate sectors, reaching so deeply into the day-to-day details of our lives that the techniques and technologies they use can and do not only control, but predict our behavior. The goals of those who violate privacy and use surveillance is almost always social control and behavior modification. Setting aside pure voyeurism, these are the areas where money is made, power is accumulated, and political or business goals are reached. And whether they are of government or of corporate Big Brother, the goals are largely the same and consistent with those just mentioned. Secrets are now for government and giant corporations to know and hold, but not for average people. And they're used by Big Brother to both acquire and hold power. J. Edgar Hoover had secrets to hide, for example, so he knew well their power. A gay man at the pinnacle of American power for most of his life, the FBI director knew that in many U.S. states, he and his lover, Clyde Tolson, could be prosecuted and sent to prison for their private, consensual behavior. Yet Hoover and Tolson lived together, and their relationship was an open secret among Washington's cognoscenti. I still remember a beautiful summer day in Ireland, Louise and I sitting in the living room of author Anthony Summers and his wife Robin, as they described to us the shocking details of Hoover's life and abuses of power they'd uncovered writing Official and Confidential, The Secret Life of J. Edgar Hoover. That books like Summers weren't published until after Hoover's death is a striking testimonial to the power of surveillance and the blackmail material it can produce to keep powerful people's secrets hidden even from the world's best investigative journalists. Every politician or reporter of any consequence knew that Hoover had a file on him. They were almost all men back then, and powerful men at that time were
far more likely to harbor salacious secrets, ensuring Hoover an unbroken hold over the FBI from its founding in 1935 to his 1977 death. But Hoover didn't use his massive FBI surveillance powers just to cow politicians and reporters. He was also interested in advancing policies close to his heart. A dedicated white supremacist running an FBI where all meaningful power was held in white hands throughout his life, Hoover, or an underling at his behest, famously sent FBI surveillance tapes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. having an extramarital affair to the civil rights leader himself, implying that they'd next go to his wife and the public if he didn't commit suicide. Hoover also spent his entire career downplaying the role of Italian organized crime in the United States because, among other things, mafia godfather Santo Trafficante had the goods on his sexual orientation and regularly hosted him and Tolson for gambling junkets. When, in 1961, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy overruled Hoover and began prosecuting the mob, with the number of cases brought shooting up from dozens annually to over 700 a year in the early 1960s, the mafia backlash eventually destroyed the Kennedy dynasty. There's a more modern story of how surveillance and invasions of privacy have impacted American politics. The rise to the presidency of serial rapist, wannabe fascist, and crooked businessman Donald Trump. The biggest big brother of the corporate world, Facebook, had for years been compiling massive troves of personal data on Americans, even Americans without a Facebook account, as any page with a Facebook logo on it can send your browsing activity back to Facebook. And sometime in the mid-2010s, Cambridge Analytica hired a data scientist to put together an app that could suck down that data without Facebook's knowledge. Cambridge once bragged that they ended up with more than 4,000 data points on each of 230 million Americans. The book, The Hidden History of Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy, by Thom Hartmann. Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag you're it. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
It starts with a promise, a populist glow of how to shake the system, make the status quo go. But behind the curtain, the stage is set for a power play we won't soon forget. They charm the crowd, they seize the mic, then target the truth and dim the light. The pillars quake, the ground runs red, a democracy hangs by a thread.
Welcome back, 35 minutes past the hour, and picking up your calls here, Rich in Woolly, Washington. Hey, Rich, what's up?
Well, I think we're going about this all wrong. I think we need to be little Doge helpers. With all the focus on waste, fraud, and abuse, we need to be pointing out actual waste, fraud, and abuse. And Democratic politicians, pundits, people like Alec Lawson with his organization, whoever can get on the bully pulpit behind the microphone in front of a camera, we've got to be pointing out where there is actual waste, fraud, and abuse.
Hundreds of billions in fossil fuel subsidies, defense contractor cost overruns. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, that
or maybe we could just focus all on one topic and say, like, Medicare Advantage and all the corruption and waste in Medicare Advantage.
That's a
Bring
good
it to the forefront. You're educating the people. Musk ain't going to do diddly with it, but at least you're pointing out his hypocrisy. Because, look, folks, here's real waste and fraud and abuse. And what's Doge going to do about it? They're going to steal your Medicaid.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a great suggestion, Rich. Thank you very much.
We need it on
for
the floor of Congress and on the radio and on the TV everywhere.
I agree. Thank you. Richard in Houston, Texas. Hey, Richard, what's up?
Thank you. I found a protest that I want to make an announcement to. It's been ongoing for 8 years. I'm on the way from right now. And it's John Cornyn's Houston office, 5300 Memorial, every Tuesday from 11:30 to 1. It's been going on for 8 years. If I'd have known about it back then, I'd been there.
Really? Protest for 8 years in front of John Cornyn's office in Houston?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had found out about it a couple of months ago, and this is my sixth one. We need more people. And there's somebody there. You can just show up. We got plenty of signs. And just please, we need more people. It's organized in way of just showing up. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to give us your address, phone number, name, or anything. Just show up. We got plenty of signs. And like I said, if I'd have known about this years ago, I would have been there. But as far as it's right down the alley of what you're talking about, protesting, that's what it's going to take at this point.
I think so.
As far as taxes, come on, Tom. Paying taxes, like Leona Humphrey said, that's for the little people.
Yeah, right. Sadly.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah.
5300
Memorial. 5300 Memorial. It's inside Duluth. It's 5300 Memorial in Dieter. And please, more of the people to show up. Yeah, the 8-year anniversary was 2 weeks ago, and we had over 30 people there. And usually it's an average of 10 or 12 people. It's pouring down raining today, but we had 15 people. And we're getting a lot more positive response of people driving by and honking their horn and giving us a thumbs up. In fact, it was like 3 times the amount.
I got it. Richard, what time of the day and what days?
11:30 till 1, Tuesday. Every Tuesday.
Okay. Every Tuesday from 11:30 to 1 local time in Houston, Texas. Richard, I hope some Houstonians are listening and they show up and say hi to you. So, Richard, thank you very much for the public service announcement there. Tony in Danville, Virginia. Hey, Tony, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, let me tell you about how they suppress the voice of the public here in Danville, Virginia. Here about 6 months ago, I tried to organize a protest of our city shelter that has an 83% euthanasia rate. And
an animal shelter.
An animal shelter that had an 83% euthanasia rate.
Wow.
And was wanting to protest in front of the shelter and in front of the city hall. Now, the city ordinances in Danville state that you can have up to 5 protesters at a location. If you go over 5, you're required to put up a $75 fee plus a $1 million insurance bond per location.
Wow. Is this Virginia law?
Yeah, no, it's the Danville ordinance, Danville City ordinance law.
Okay.
And I actually came back to them and said that's unconstitutional. You are putting a financial burden on the freedom of speech.
Correct.
And I basically
freedom of assembly.
I laughed at. I got laughed at. Yeah. And on top of that, if you have a protest with just 5 people protesting, picket protesting, and a 6th person joins you, then they will come shut you down and cite you and or arrest you.
Amazing. Well, Tony, thanks for the heads up. I guess I'm glad I don't live in Danville, Virginia, but keep up the good work. And thanks for the...
I'm trying.
Yeah,
Tom.
Thanks for the info, Tony. Mark in San Francisco. Hey, Mark, from one side of the
How's
coast
it going,
to the
Tom?
other, one coast to the other. What's up?
Oh, not much. I think the Democrats really need to come out and say the Republican Party's failed America and just hammer them. I mean, the only chance we got is what Alex Lawson said. Start hammering these Republican representatives and tell them they're failing our country.
Yeah.
That's the only way. Put pressure on them because then they'll fear their constituents more than Trump. That's the only way we're going to win, Tom.
I agree. I agree, and we need to, and we need. This is a new era. You know, the media is not the media that we had 25 years ago, and we need politicians who know how to use social media, who know how to build memes, who know how to get publicity, who know how to get the word out. I mean, AOC is probably the best example of that. Or on the right, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene and you know, people like her. They know how to get that publicity, and we've got to be doing the same thing. Well said. Thank you very much, Mark. Adele in Villa Park, Illinois. Hey, Adele, thanks for listening to WCPT. What's up?
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for being our shining light and my personal anchor every morning I wake up, and I think I can't wait to listen to Tom, and that is the truth.
Well, thank you.
Tom, last week you told me to go over to indivisible.org. It was the greatest advice. It is so organized, open up doors for me. I'm attending local events. We've got a lot of local elections that I wasn't exactly familiar with, so thank you. And then I went on a Progressive Democrats of America, I think, call. They have it every Sunday on Zoom at 4 p.m. Eastern. And Alan Minsky, the chair, I believe it was him that said, hey, you guys, we have to thank our federal judges who are stepping up. And that really got my attention. So this is what I'm doing. I'm making a list of all federal judges, attorney generals, senators, congressmen who have had the courage to speak up, and other, you know, elected leaders who have had the courage to speak up and take action. I've already written to some of them. And then I'm going to make a list of all attorneys general, all senators and congressmen, and just keep blasting them with emails. That's the way I get through. It's just a better use of my time than trying to get through up to their offices, Republican, Democrat. That's it. It makes me feel like I'm doing something and that I'm in the solution. So I just want to thank you.
That is great. And you are doing something, and you are part of the solution, Adele. Good on you. Thanks so much for the report back. That's inspiring. I appreciate the call, Adele. Bill in Richmond, Virginia. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
I'd like to bring up one thing about the gentleman calling from Danville, and I'm very familiar with Danville. Danville, in every election in the last 20 years, the city itself, not the county around it, has gone heavily Democrat. So whoever setting these laws up or these ordinances, I can tell you, and the gentleman, I'm going to challenge him to ask him if the administration of the city is not Democrat.
Well, it may well be. I mean, you know, corruption is, I mean, you know, look at Menendez and Blagojevich. Corruption is not just in the Republican Party. Come on.
No, but quickly, I can tell you why this ordinance came about, because I was working there at the time. When they decided to change what was the last White House Confederacy, that's where Jeff Davis wound up, and there was another a Confederate something with it, that when the city decided to change that designation, that's when there was all picketing going on about that. And so, you know, like I said, neither side is free of sin, in my estimation.
I agree.
But I do. Oh, you've got the neatest screener I've ever talked to. I mean,
oh, good.
He's great. Huh?
Yeah, Mateo's a good guy.
The thing I want to ask you, though, is this. Does the Democratic Party take any responsibility, and you know I'm not a Trumpster, for what's going on now, including Trump being elected, and then what's going on? Because all descriptions I'm hearing by Democrats back then were feckless and stuff like that. And as far as transparency goes, my Lord, there was no transparency about Joe Biden.
Yeah, he was not out there anywhere near enough. You know, yes, the Democratic Party, I think, frankly, is largely responsible for Trump having gotten elected, and most Democrats will tell you that. Biden had great policies, in my opinion. I realize as a conservative, Bill, you probably disagree with his policies, but he got a lot of good stuff done, in my opinion, but he never talked about it. He didn't get out, you know. If it had been Donald Trump doing those things every single day, he'd be saying, hey, I just lowered your insulin cost to $35. Hey, we just put, you know, charging stations all across the country. Hey, we're making it easier for you for you to raise your kids. We're dealing with your student debt. All this stuff that Biden did, nobody knew about because he never talked about it because he stutters so badly and he's terrible at being the front man. And then on top of that, when he first ran in 2020, he said, I'm only going to run for one term. I'm going to be a transitional guy. And then he changed his mind in the middle of his term and decided he was going to run for re-election, which was a huge mistake and breaking a campaign promise. He should have let there be a primary so that we could have gotten a really good, charismatic, I'm guessing it probably would have been Gavin Newsom, but who knows, a good charismatic figure who could have taken on Trump and beat Trump. But, instead, Kamala Harris had 103 days or something like that to basically turn an entire ship of state. And that was after 4 years of her being invisible. So, yeah, I have...
It was her being a particularly bloody pulpit or bully pulpit for what the party had done. The only thing that came up was she kept saying, well, I stand on what it is. That's really what came out in interviews.
No, yeah, her campaign was relying way too heavily on Democratic consultants who make their living on a commission when they place advertising on television, and they don't make anything close to that commission when they do social media or when they do free what's called earned media, showing up on shows and podcasts and things. The Republicans just out-campaigned them massively. And then, of course, Musk dropping $270 million didn't hurt. But, the Democrats have they're paying a big price for this right now, Bill, and I believe most in the party realize it. Bill, thank you for the call. It's always nice to hear from you. I got to move along, though. I'm out of time here. It's 48 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where we dare to ask, is Walmart really a person? Nah, come on. The Supreme Court got that one wrong, too. Stay tuned. And welcome back. CJ in Shreveport, Louisiana. Hey, CJ, what's on your mind today?
Well, earlier you mentioned this oath that the federal employees now have to agree to, and part of that is, it's an oath of loyalty to not the Constitution, but to Trump.
Yeah.
And
I don't know about an oath, but they do have to...
A statement that they agree, at least, anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And one of the things that you've mentioned, just verify, that they have to agree that he won the 2020 election.
Correct.
Okay. So basically they're having to state that they agree that he's not constitutionally eligible to be president right now, and I'm not talking about the 14th Amendment.
I think the biggest point that for me, CJ, is that they have to lie in order to get a job as a law enforcement officer.
Well, that's true, but I'm talking about, though, that, under the 22nd Amendment, no person shall be elected. Look it up. It says elected to, not inaugurated, president more than twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by Trump's own assertion that he's been saying all along that the Republican Party has, didn't they make that part of their official platform at one point?
I believe so.
Now this statement of loyalty for federal employees are all saying that he's ineligible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We should have used that. The Democrats should have used that on January 6th.
There you go.
That's confirmation, because he... and that wouldn't have been election denialism. It wouldn't have been bringing up anything about Greg Palast's research.
Yeah, it'd be a great one to bring up with some of his nominees.
It's eligibility denialism, which is, it'd be the same as if, in 2020 the Democrats had nominated AOC because she wasn't 35 years old yet.
I got it.
Yeah.
I agree with you, CJ. CJ, I want to get one more call in. Thank you very much for the call. Mitch in Seattle. Hey, Mitch, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
I want to, with all this stuff about Musk and them ignoring the judge's orders and everything, I want to just state that anybody else that busts a judge's orders, if a judge tells you to stop doing something or to whatever, if you don't comply with the judge's orders, he would usually put a warrant out for your arrest.
Yep.
So maybe that's what these judges should go ahead and consider doing.
I think there's a good chance that at least one of them might. I'm forgetting the guy's name, McCormick or something like that, but he's sounding seriously pissed off.
Yeah, that's one thing. The other thing that's getting me is where's the Joint Chiefs of Staff sitting back and watching this coup, because they pledged an oath to the Constitution.
Has he named a new chairman to the Joint Chiefs?
I don't think so. I've looked and I've seen Brown in there.
Yeah, I have not heard. I have not heard anything about that.
Yeah, and the only way to contact them is through email, through a mail letter.
Yeah,
you have to literally mail them a letter. And I'm like, yeah, that could take all day long.
Well, the Joint Chiefs are not a political body. They, it makes sense that they wouldn't be out there, in a campaign mode kind of thing.
Yeah, well, the other thing I thought about was in this state, in the situation we're in right now, with everybody wanting to keep a democracy, but you got these oligarchs wanting to make it an authoritarian state and get rid of the Constitution. Maybe the military should be a fourth branch of government just to fortify what's in the Constitution.
Yeah, you want to be very careful about that. You want to keep the military under civilian control.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, under civilian control, but still,
I get it.
They're under control for felon, and they won't even allow a felon to enlist.
There you go. Mitch, I got to run. Thanks for the call. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. There is a long history of right-wing, conservative, Republican-appointed Supreme Court justices becoming liberals, or at least reasonable. Earl Warren is probably the best-known example. He was, a right-wing governor of California. He was a hard-ass Alameda County prosecutor, a district attorney, and when Eisenhower put him on the court, a year later, he did the Brown versus Brown v. Board of Education case. He ended discrimination, racial discrimination in schools, or at least, tried to end it. So why are Republican billionaires now sucking up to conservative members of the Supreme Court? In my opinion, it's not a quid pro quo. They're not trying to get specific votes on specific issues. They're trying to prevent them from doing what Earl Warren did, which is waking up and voting for the benefit of America rather than just their patrons. There's a whole piece about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 54 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Marie in Atlanta. Hey, Marie, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I'm going to go it one more time. I started 2 years before the 24 election, and we're going to try it again. Regarding the SAVE Act, which has been introduced in the 119th Congress as H.R. 22, which would require proof of citizenship before being eligible to register to vote. Just want to remind everybody, if you don't have it already, get your certified copy of your birth certificate. Make sure if you're someone whose name has changed that you have certified, not photocopies of every change of name. If you were naturalized, make sure that you have a certified copy of that naturalization form. I know where this is going. This is based on what Greg Palast said. I'm going to keep trying to get people to get the fierce urgency of now to do that, because it may require getting some money together to be able to order things, may require ordering something from a state far away from you, and with staffing at government levels being reduced, it may take some time. So please start now, people. If you don't have it, please start now.
Well, let me add one thing. Under the SAVE Act, if this thing passes, and there's a chance it will, if it passes, you cannot use a certificate of marriage as proof that your name has changed. Now, about 80% of all women who get married change their last name to their husband's name. Only about a third of those women actually go through any kind of legal process to change their names. They just start using the new name. And I mean, it's what Louise and I did 52 years ago. And so what's going to happen is an estimated 34 to 37% of all American women will no longer be able to vote if this piece of legislation passes, because the marriage certificate is not a legal document that can be used to prove a name change. And so if your birth certificate has one name and your driver's license or your passport has a different name, they will not accept that to let you register to vote.
And so that brings me to my next point, that if women need to be able to go to court, and it is a process where you file a petition with the court, indicate your name, what do you want to change it to, get a court order, but it takes time. So
That's
again,
right.
fierce urgency of now.
Get started. Marie, thank you for the call. Always great to hear from you. I really appreciate it. It's the end of the hour, end of the program today. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for being with us today. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag you're it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you. Stay safe. And I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.